Welcome to Blynd Submyshynz, where DIY bands submit songs for us to listen to and react to blind. Every week, we'll bring a guest from the underground music, arts, or entertainment scene to help you sort through mountains of new music. We go in blind, so you don't have to. Blynd Submyshynz.
Blynd Submyshynz!
Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode of
Blynd Submyshynz.
Blynd. Actually, I wish I could.
Yeah,
we've been talking about Peacemaker. If you're not watching Peacemaker on HBO Max, fucking watch it. And even if just for the music, because the director, James Gunn, has decided that this DC superhero Peacemaker is obsessed with hair metal.
80s hair metal.
Oh my god, this soundtrack is fucking
great.
Incredible. Episode 5, there's a whole like Hanoi Rocks is like a major plot point.
Yeah. Yeah, it is actually like a major plot point.
Oh,
right
I love
down
it.
to tattoos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Lyrics, tattoos, or was it the song title?
I think it was the song
11th
title.
Street Kids.
I can't remember. I wasn't like a giant Hanoi Rocks. I knew of them. I wasn't obsessed.
You know, listening to that back though, you can see it doesn't sound anything. That song at least doesn't sound hair metal at all. But you can see how it got there from.
Oh, you can totally see how it got
from
there.
that.
Yeah, I mean it's no Bang Tango, but
See now, Bang Tango's the tail end. That was when they were trying to morph it and add some like alternative stuff.
Yeah.
So there was some Jane's Addiction-y terrible slap bass and. But I have that record because it's fucking awesome.
Really?
Psycho Circus.
Nice.
Now you're back. You're back. You're back. Watch out back.
That was awesome.
Oh, I have my moments.
Welcome to another episode of Jeff Sings.
Jeff sings about Blynd Submyshynz. Well, we should not bullshit for very long because we have a fucking awesome guest.
Yes, we do.
So a couple weeks ago, we had Artie Shepherd on from Saint Vitus.
A bunch of bands.
We talked about upcoming shows at Saint Vitus,
Yes.
including the fact that we had tickets to see
One of those shows.
Yob at Saint Vitus,
Yes,
which
we
we
did.
will not be making.
I sold those tickets.
So the tickets are sold,
Yes.
but we thought we'd have Mike Scheidt on
Oh,
to talk a little bit
that's a
about.
good idea.
Yeah, do you think that's a good idea?
That way we
Well,
still get to see him.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
'cause
we get to see him in San Francisco too,
This is true with Broom.
with Broom.
And
If you
Mount
haven't,
Widow.
if you're in the Bay Area and you don't have tickets for that show or the Felton Music Hall yet, get them.
You should get them.
And
When Worship gets to open in Felton.
Indeed.
Joshua was another guest earlier in the season.
Yeah.
Season. Like
Season. We have
I don't-
seasons.
Maybe we should do seasons. Take a break.
I hate when podcasts are like season 1 episode, but then they don't ever take a break. So what the fuck is the point of the season? I don't. Whatever.
Who knows?
All right. So
right.
without any too much of our bullshit,
Are you gonna play his music?
yeah.
first?
So first thing we're gonna do is play a little tidbit of a lovely cover
That
of
we've never talked about.
Perfect Strangers that Yob did for the Glory or Death Deep Purple tribute.
You.
Pick scratch. And there he is. We were just listening to a little clip of the wonderful cover of Perfect Strangers you guys did for the Deep Purple tribute record. How you doing? How you doing? It sounds so good. I want to just keep listening to it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah,
Good.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks for agreeing to do this. Thanks for doing that cover. I'm so happy with the way the album came out. The whole thing is great. I saw you post a picture of your vinyls that showed up.
Yeah, it was really fun, and yeah, everybody knocked it out of the park. There's not a bad cut on there.
That's good. Yeah, I was going to say, have you had a chance to listen through the whole thing yet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wait, do you listen to your own song? I always wonder about that.
Sometimes, it's But yeah, you know, it was fun. I mean, the thing that was kind of novel for us is we've never done a cover in 22 years.
Holy
never
shit.
Once. And so that was the first time we ever did a cover. So it was, listening to it, it was definitely a different experience than listening to our own stuff.
Yeah, I would imagine. And also you kind of want to hear what it sounds like on the record, you know, coming through a record player, what the finished product sounds like.
Well, we entered into it with a kind of an idea of what we were shooting for, and then in the process it became what it is. And so, and you know, we were trying to be timely about it, so sometimes you don't really, you have to wait to relax a bit before you can actually hear what you did.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, what made you guys pick Perfect Strangers?
When I was 12, 13 years old, there's a local radio station that played, you know, what was current metal at that time. And when Deep Purple put out Perfect Strangers, I mean, they'd had a pretty big hiatus and they came back as that lineup. And they, on the radio, they would play Gypsy's Kiss and the song Perfect Strangers. And that was really my introduction to not just Deep Purple, but also Ian Gillan, you know, as a singer.
Yep.
And it just blew my socks off. And I've listened to that record ever since. So that was probably when it came out. So I think that's 84, something like that.
Yeah.
So I was probably 13.
Yeah, I think it was 84. And there was a long break in between, you know, and going through gathering all the materials and prepping to do that record. It was like, man, same with Thin Lizzy. Like, I didn't really have an appreciation for the depth of the catalog and like how much the lineup changes affected the overall. It's like a bunch of different bands, but there's still some core of it that's kind of the same that you can draw a line throughout. It was really cool. So I was not a huge Deep Purple or Thin Lizzy fan prior to doing these records. So like everyone who listens to this knows, I'm waiting for number 4, which is Rush, and that's the one that like has me nervous as shit to pick bands and see how it comes out, because every one of those songs is so precious to me, and I don't know, like I'm excited, but I'm also scared to hear some of them. So we'll see how that goes, but it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
What else? So you mentioned that, you know, you found that sort of as a teenager, but what got you into music? How did you have parents that had record collections? Like, how did you really get into music and then get into like the heavier side of it?
Well, I was born in 1970. And so when I was a toddler crawling around, you know, my dad was a huge Zeppelin fan and Creedence Clearwater Revival. And my mom was a Beatles fanatic and also, you know, Elton John and plus just what was on the radio. Yeah. I mean, 1972 radio was tight.
Pretty hot. It was
classics. I mean, classic music with people before auto-tune, before the Pro Tools.
Lots of studio trickery. Yeah.
Yeah, you had to be good. And so, you know, that music that I grew up on was pivotal. I mean, I could just rattle off any of the hits from that time, but I think when I started getting towards, you know, actual heavier music, it was a combination of a couple of influences as friends. I had a buddy who would send me cassette tapes, burns of records that he was listening to. And that was like Hell Awaits and Oz, Fire in the Brain, Metallica.
Yep. And
then that, along with the radio, which was also playing a lot of this stuff as well, was a big deal. And then my cousin moved to San Francisco.
It's always a cousin.
And he became a punk. Like, he came back with an army jacket and safety pins and tore up jeans and combat boots and Dead Kennedys and Black Flag. And so I started getting the punk side of it. And that was probably, I mean, heavy metal for me was probably 81 or 82. And then punk, as, you know, punk or hardcore of that era, was maybe a year or two behind that. And for me, I was in a small town, Springfield, Oregon, and there wasn't really a lot that was, I mean, bands would come through town, but I just wasn't hooked into any kind of scene yet. And it was very rural, and you know, you just had to really fight to get that stuff. I'd climb on, there's a record shop in Eugene, and it was about a solid 15 miles away, and I would get on my BMX bike and bicycle all the way there and listen to the music they had on, go through the records, cassettes, and that was how I got it, and then go to whatever shows would come through town.
Do you remember the first like physical piece of music you ever bought? I did, because I remember mine, and it was a bike ride to a warehouse store.
The first piece of music I ever bought, because my mom would spin Elton John's Yellow Brick Road and also the Greatest Hits record. And so I was like 5 or 6, and she took me to a record store. And I'm going to answer this in 2 different ways. So
Right. I'll take it.
So I bought at the time what the newest Elton John was, which was Single Man. And that's a weird Elton John record, and it was kind of over my head. And I was like, oh, I like it, but that was the first record I ever had, and there he was on the cover. But then I had another friend who was, you know, I was like the metal guy and he was the punk guy, and his grandpa would take him record shopping. And one day I was hanging out with them, and he bought my friend like, I don't know, like $100 worth of records, which is, you know, this is 1983 we're talking about.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And then he looked at me and he said, pick out whatever you want. Pick out something that you want. And I got Black Sabbath Live Evil.
There you
go. That was hugely consequential.
I can imagine. Do you like live? We talk about this a lot. Do you like live records, live recordings in general?
I do like them. You know, I mean, it's, I don't have as many of those as I have studio records, but yeah, I do like them.
Yeah. I love live records, and some people just hate them. I mean, I don't know if I would be here without
live records.
Well, without you know, All the World's a Stage and Exit Stage Left. You know, ultimately are the 2 records that got me so deep into music. And I don't know. I was enamored early on, especially with that band, with the fact that they that 3 guys made all that noise live, and that like they fucking pulled it off somehow. And I was just trying to figure out, like, is there trickery? Do they go back in and fix things later, or is this really just what was captured? Now, I always have that question when I listen to live records: is how much massaging do they get, you know, post?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's, I mean, as far as production and things like that, you know, it's possible that you might be getting something that technically sounds better than it did live.
Yeah.
Yet live is live, and there's certainly in the case of, I mean, I know that there are some live records where they've gone back in and like redid vocals and things like that. But because I mean, vocals is the big wild card out of all of it. You can tune a guitar. If you break a string, you can fix it. If you bust a drum head, you can replace it. If the singer doesn't feel in the throat, that's all she wrote. You know, that's just how it is. And there's the trickery there is somebody who's doing the training and making all the right decisions. Yeah. And then the stars aligning and just whatever it is, there's some definite mystic sorcery, but it's part of what's so remarkable about Live Evil and just really Dio in general. I mean, you know, he had some rough nights here or there, but boy, you sure don't ever hear him or see him on the internet for the countless live shows there are of Dio. Yeah. And it's what's so marvelous about that album. I mean, of course, everyone's rehearsed and well played, and they're playing at a caliber that's hard fought for.
Yeah.
You know, bands aren't just that good. You have to want to be that good.
Yep.
completely.
But then the vocals, I mean, it's the hardest job. It's the hardest job in the studio, and it's the hardest job in the live setting. Like I like to, make the cracks of, to our singer about helping carry gear and shit. But I know what's going through his head, and there's so much vulnerability in just getting out there and opening your mouth and yelling, to the world, and not being able to hide behind, anything else, an instrument or an amp or something. So yeah, I think that's maybe the magic of some of the best live records, is that some really brilliant vocal performances captured that you just go, wow. Mm-hmm. I mean, I even think back, we saw Mastodon on this last tour that they did, and those guys have put in the work on vocals, right? Throughout their career, they have changed a lot. If you go back and watch the Crack the Sky live DVD from London, and listen to the way the vocals sound, and then compare them to if we had a board recording of the show that we saw, it's like night and day. Like, they figured out, like, hey, this is something we want to get better at, and they put in the time and did it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I get it. I wish, I would encourage, I've done, I'm not saying that I've done the same as Mastodon, but I made a decision about 2012 to get lessons and get a vocal coach and try to understand why great singers are consistently great. Even if they're having a rough night, there's something about a trained singer that not only is doing warm-ups and warm-downs, but they're drinking plenty of water, and they're doing the best things and avoiding the things that'll take away from their voice, and taking it really seriously, because having a rough night on your voice, I mean, when you're on stage, talk about the vulnerability, there's nothing quite like that feeling, and it's not a good one. And I kind of made a decision that I was going to do what I could to finally understand why I would have a good night, why I would have a bad night. And it is a lot of discipline, but it's interesting to me often that, whether it's drums or bass or guitar, that discipline is just kind of built in. Like, certainly there are people that are naturally gifted players, but they still have to put in the reps.
Yeah, you got to put in time.
And with vocalists, for some reason, it's not common knowledge to me that you have to do the same thing. You have to put in your practice away from the band as well as with the band. And you have to make sure you have a lot of water, and you do need to learn how to use your jaw and where to put your tongue and where to send the vocal, and do some scales and learn, half steps and whole steps, and learn how to do those things, because when you do, man, it just opens up a whole new world. And you can be on tour for 30 days or 35 days, even be sick, and yet you have that to fall back on. And it's so brilliant, not just live, but then also you walk into the studio, and it's not about getting a take, it's about which take.
What's the best one? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, boy, all the singers out there, if you're not doing it, do it.
I know Amy and John from You're the Cobra, and I talked to Amy right before she started taking lessons. She had that same moment. I mean, she's a music teacher. This is what she does for a living, but vocals were not. She's a piano player and a bass player. She finally decided to buckle down, and she said it was the same thing, and that the change that she was not expecting was the increase in her confidence, because she knew that the instrument was there. And so then that comes out in your performance, not just in the quality of the vocal, but just in your overall performance. It makes such a big difference. If I went out on stage and had to play a song I'd only played 3 times and was racking my brain trying to remember it, the notes, and maybe I would get through it, but that's very different from when a song is just in your being, and you play it without having to think about it. And I would imagine it's the same for, training your voice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's it's comparable in a way to playing like a fretless instrument, in the sense that
indeed,
like if you're reaching for the 9th fret, you have that fret marker there, where you're going. You have no such thing like that with your voice. And so you have to train to know where it is and how to either slide into it, or the different ways you want to hit it, and breath control. And there are people that naturally have that ability, yet at the same time, you look at a lot of the classic singers, they come from choir, they come from church choir, they come from music programs in school, or they come from somebody in their family, like their grandma, that really knew how to sing. And it's however you learn to do it, the human body is the human body. And it just, operates under certain rules. And if you learn how to address and work with that, I mean, improve, you can improve. I mean, not everyone's going to be Dio. In fact, hardly anyone will ever be Dio. But you can be better. And like you said, then it's the confidence, and then it's the, you have that moxie on stage, and, and not everyone has to be some technically perfect singer, obviously. I mean, there's lots of examples of people that have character voices and just throw everything into it. And so it's not right or wrong, but if you ask any of those people if they want to sing like that to their top ability every night, of course they're going to say yes.
Yeah.
And there is an answer to how to do that.
And we got an example of how serious you are about this, because the last time we saw you was at the Oakland Metro when you were on tour after having vocal problems. And there were just songs that you were, I think, really smartly were like, you know what, I'm just not even going to attempt this because it's not there. And it was a bummer. There were a couple songs that I was like, damn, I really want to. But that's life. And I totally got the decision to do it that way. It was really smart. But looking forward to, we have tickets for the Great American Music Hall, so we get to
cool.
We get a do-over in a couple weeks here, a month, whatever it is. It's coming up pretty soon, actually.
March.
And we actually had bought tickets to the Saint Vitus show, thinking, maybe this is our time to fly to New York and finally go to Saint Vitus. And we interviewed Artie Shepherd a couple weeks ago, but it just
great guy,
isn't he? Yeah, we had so much fun with him. He was a crack up. He gave me a lot of shit too, which I appreciate. It's very new, like he's a very New York down to his core, I think, is really what it comes down to. But we ended up not planning a trip just because of everything that's going, because of the world, and selling those tickets. But man, that's going to be fun. 2 nights at St. Vitus.
4 nights.
Or 4 nights. Sorry, that's right.
4
You guys are
nights.
doing
4 nights.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Yep. This is going to be a case in point,
Yeah. Exactly.
And you're going to have people that are there all 4 nights, and they'll be like, "Oh, night 3 sounded a little tired."
Yeah.
And you're just
I mean, that's the nature of the beast, it's, and so, and what's weird too, is it's subjective. People will tell you night 1 was the best. And in my mind, I'll be like, oh, that was
rough.
the duffer.
Yeah.
And so, there's no accounting for it. You just have to plug in every night and give what you got.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
So fun. Are you fired up to go? And you guys have played a couple shows, I know, but are you excited to go do it?
Get back on tour.
Definitely. And it's weird. I mean, it hardly needs explanation given the general, what the fuck reality that we've all been in. But like, it's weird to be in crowds again. It's weird to do that stuff. And yet, this amount of time off, it has certainly been to work things back up and play again. It is, I mean, I think every band that's been around for any length of time could tell you that they've had kind of seasons.
Yeah.
And just as you grow and change and you go through various things and then you come back together and it's the same, but it's different. And the shows that we did in Bellingham and Portland, it was wild how great it felt. And given that amount of time off, there's just a little bit of question like, wow, okay, I'm definitely excited to do this, but I've almost forgotten what this feels like. And then it was weird to watch kind of some rote memory of like, oh yeah, this is how you load a van. Oh yeah, this is how you load in. This is how you set up. This is how you sound check. And then, oh, this is what it's like to be in a crowd. And then you just start remembering things. And it was really, and everybody I think that's going to shows right now, for the most part, is just so glad.
Yeah.
And so the whole vibe in the room is different. And it's, some of it's, I think, you can quantify, and some of it is just,
Yeah, our first show
it's
was
cool. So yes, I am looking forward to it. Yes.
Good. Yeah.
Awesome.
Our first show back was going to see Broom at Bottom of the Hill. So you guys will be playing with them. But I just remember at one point we looked over at each other and I think we were both kind of choked up.
Just to see your friends on stage again, playing music. It was like, it was emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and we've slowly been reemerging. There's only it's like we've been really good, but life to some degree goes on. We did everything we were supposed to do, and so I was at Disneyland last weekend. It was like that was talk about being in crowds. That was it was a very uncrowded weekend there, but it was still just kind of like, all right, I guess we're doing
weird.
this.
There's people,
and like seeing the fucking yahoos that were like, there was some lady with a grandchild. We were getting on the Winnie the Pooh ride. Like, this is a teachable moment, right? To show like empathy, compassion, whatever, all the things that Winnie the Pooh is about. And the little kid didn't have a mask on, and the ride attendant goes, "Hey, she's going to need a mask to ride this ride. Do you have one?" And the lady goes, "No." And the attendant turns around and walks away, and the grandma goes, "If they need you to wear a mask, they can give you one." To the little girl. I'm like, this is in this moment, that's what you think you need to teach your child right now. That's the lesson. And then 2 seconds later, the attendant walked back and handed the kid a mask.
Oh, jeez.
So I was like, yes. It was beautiful, but so weird to just like, because it's like, I see that shit on the internet and on the news and stuff, but it's in the Bay Area, we don't run into it all that, very, very rarely are we running into that kind of resistance. I would imagine you're in Portland. I would imagine
Eugene, a couple hours south. Yeah.
Oh, dude.
So it's the same thing. I mean, any part of Oregon that's really populated. I mean, you don't have to. You go 20 minutes in any direction, and you start getting into the other side of the argument. Let's say, and I don't know. I mean, I used to get pretty mad about that stuff, and anymore, I just kind of feel for everybody.
Yeah.
It's like, whatever side of the argument you're on, it's like, it's just, and believe me, I lean towards an argument, but it's just the challenge of a generation that we're all going through.
Yeah.
And I think most people aren't intentionally being bad actors on one side or the other. It's stress and confusion and basically an army of microscopic bears.
Yeah, absolutely. And just all the friction is what's so awful. Like, why there just shouldn't be that kind of friction. You're in Disneyland. Everyone's just there everybody's just trying to be happy and like do something fun. So like, even if that's your belief, just stuff it and grab the mask and smile at your grandkid and have a nice, that's the rule. So don't come to the park if you don't like the rule. I don't know. It was weird. I've spent a lot of time in Eugene recently. My daughter just started college up there in
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah. So,
and U of O?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Good old U of O, and I just had to drive her back after Christmas in one shot because her flight got canceled on Sunday. So I drove to Eugene, from San Jose to Eugene and back in 18 hours while it was snowing.
I used to live there on campus. I didn't go to school there. I just lived there. It was the first place I lived when I moved out of the house. And I didn't go to school there. I did a lot of acid there, though.
That's what you do in college.
Yeah, pretty much. I'll have to ask my daughter if she's doing that as well.
That's awesome. Well, I think it's who knows, but I think kids in the late 80s and kids right now, I don't know how much they think about acid or not. It's probably more towards like microdosing or something.
Yeah, mushrooms. Exactly, lots of mushrooms, freely available weed. They have their one friend with the fake ID so they can go to the dispensary. She updates me on all of this. I get the
Keeps you in the loop.
I went to my first drinking party. Here's a picture of the bottle of vodka and the Red Bull. I was like, maybe don't go from 0 to 100 your first drinking party. Like maybe start with a seltzer or something.
Seriously.
Oh man, you get that age and school is in session in more ways than one,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, night school and school.
Yeah, it's been fascinating to watch too because they had an end of high school experience like no other. Oh, yeah. Maybe in 100 years since the last pandemic. Right. She spent her last year and a half of high school at home. And so it was like really bizarre. And then to see all these kids land at campus and just like, I'm free. They're, they had pretty strong requirements and everybody's being good. So they haven't really had any virus trouble. they've had cases, but not really problems. And so they're just having fun. The kids are just like, so she went from being cooped up to being like completely free and on her own.
Well, it's beautiful. And my kids are older. My youngest just turned 23, and my twins, Zeke and Maggie, will be, 27.
Wow.
In July. And so,
adults.
I have friends that have young kids, and it's what a crazy thing, to do that in at home school, and you're trying to make a living from home too, and just wow. Yeah. Heavy duty.
Yeah. Did any of and you don't need to answer this if you don't want to talk about your family, but did any of your kids get into music?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all music fanatics, all of them. And my eldest son plays quite a bit. Guitar, he's played bass in bands. He loves keys. My daughter doesn't play, but she's certainly an avid fan. And my youngest son plays a little. He has a upright piano and a bass, but they're all just definitely music obsessed for sure.
Did they go down different paths? Do they listen to what Dad plays, or do they have a pretty diverse or different? Did you ever run into a time where they started listening to something and you were like, "Oh shit, I can't deal with it"?
Well, yes, but like at the same time, I don't know. I think I've had some moments of luck with being exposed to things that I normally would have never been, and then been in environments where I couldn't just escape it, and then in the process discovered its genius that was available. And so, and ultimately to me, it's like, what is it that's making you happy? What is it that's making you think? What is it that makes you, feel stoked? And so for sure, there are influences of mine that have really stuck with them. They all love Black Sabbath. The moment I put on Dragon Knot, they're like, "Oh yeah, we know this." Like I was playing that in the car when they're, toddlers, and so they all love Sleep, and and my eldest son is very much a metal fan. Like he was the guy who would be going through my CD collection when he was like 8. He'd be like, "Can I listen to Black Sabbath?" I'm like, "Yes."
Of course.
"Can I listen to Spirit Caravan?" "Yes." Can I listen to Cannibal Corpse? Not yet. And so he was that guy. And then, my youngest son, Hudson, he's super into that band Vector, the crazy speed metal band that's kind of
yes.
They're like Voivod on steroids.
Yes.
And then he came up to me the other day. He said, "Have you ever heard of At the Gates?" I'm like, "Yes, I have." And he's like, "I heard that one album," and I ended up getting it for him for his birthday, and he's super stoked. But he also loves like some kinds of house music and DJ music, and some things that, it's definitely out of my wheelhouse, but I know clearly there's a lot of talent and skill. And even for some of those bands where I'm just like, "Oh, that's fluff and I don't get it," but yet they have like 5 million followers or whatever it is. Exactly. I'm like, they're making a lot of people happy. So who am I to say? Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to keep that attitude in general, and I've been pretty good about it, right? Not being the old guy who doesn't like whatever the kids are listening to. And my oldest daughter listens to everything. She's an encyclopedia. I finally hit a wall with my youngest, and you probably get it in this house too. All those like fucking joke songs on Twitch that are just weird, repetitive. Yeah. There is not one moment where like I get the joke and I'm in on it. I'm so far outside of it, I can't even explain it. And she turns them on and I'm just like instantly irritated.
Yeah, there's definitely a weird like joke song genre right now that the kids don't listen to them as jokes.
No.
and how long are the songs?
Oh God, they're probably 90 seconds.
Yeah, they're not long at all.
Yeah. See,
2 minutes maybe. Yeah, 2
minutes.
Yeah, it's I mean, that's the whole generational thing, right? Where she's like, "That's not music," shakes cane at sky, and you know, every generation goes through it. And,
whenever I feel like I'm going to start saying that, I just think back to that clip of Ben Shapiro on Howard Stern or Joe Rogan talking about how rap isn't music because my father was a music professor, and the fundamental elements of all music is it has to have melody, and rap music does not have melody, and therefore it isn't. This is not a fucking math problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Oh, don't be that guy. No, I took my oldest to see Katy Perry, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago, right? And we had bought tickets. We were real late in the game, so we bought tickets really close, but way side stage. So we actually had a partial view of the backstage area. And she was sick that night, and she said, like, "Sorry, I've got steroids, and I've taken all the meds I can take, but this is what you're going to get, you know." And then she was prepped to go on stage, and no one could see her except like the 5 of us that were there. And she was in this little hole, just coughing, and you could see tears running down her face. And then she just like wiped her face, shook herself off, stood up, and went out and did like a 10-minute like song and dance routine that I don't even know how she did it. I'm not sure how she even stood up. And I was just like, holy shit, that's why she's famous. Like,
and that's training and dedication. I mean, that's the real deal. I mean, you know, I think that sort of training, I mean, sure, it's so that you can hit your highest highs, but really it's also your safety net when things aren't going the way that you want, and then you fall back on that, and your worst could be like just so much better than anybody's best, and it's, I mean, that's a little bit of a wide brushstroke, but I have a lot of respect for those pop singers. It's you know, it's generally not my bag, but life doesn't lie. And when those people are touring and doing all those shows for that many people, I mean, there's some things you can get away with. And if you're in the ballpark, it's amazing what a crowd will do to fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're just there and you know how to have the humility to go, well, here I am, this is my life, this is my work, you're here, I'm here, and let's do this. People will be so kind to you for the most part. And for the people that aren't, they just don't understand the process. And, you know, I guess that's okay. I mean, you can't really control it, you know, but
no, not at all. So what was your first instrument? Did you start with guitar? How old were you?
My first instrument was probably a recorder.
Of course.
When all the kids have recorder class. Yeah.
Still
and
doing
then,
it.
I played violin for probably a whole 4 months. And then I actually was in a guitar class when I was 9 or 10 for probably a whole 6 months. And I just didn't get it, and I wasn't into it. And then when I started getting turned on to metal and punk, I started getting more interested, and eventually got an Ibanez Roadstar and like a 10-watt crate amp or something.
Oh,
and,
yes.
Yeah, and so it's just all
2 weeks in a row. Crate amp stories.
And but I really wasn't truly bitten by the bug to really play until I was hanging out with some friends, and you know, they leaned more towards the punk end of it, but there's some crossover in there, and I just never seen. I mean, I'd seen, of course, you know, live shows on TV. By that point, I had been to a couple of like big shows, like big concerts, but I'd never seen anybody that I knew just right in front of me, guitar, bass, drums, playing. And it just blew my mind. And I was just like, I have to do that. And back then, it's like we were doing like, I mean, they were doing like kind of running through like Trouble covers, but then also like, you know, we'd be listening to like the punk era of Corrosion of Conformity and, you know, Celtic Frost and a lot of Black Flag. And back then I didn't get Black Flag at all. You know, like my friend was a super Black Flag fanatic, and I was super into like Metallica Ride the Lightning. And And so he'd be playing like this live Black Flag stuff of Greg Ginn doing solos. He's like, oh, listen to it. There's so much feeling. I'm like, this guy's horrible. And I was just a total idiot. I didn't get it. And then, of course, years later, I went, oh, yeah, it's all amazing. Ride the Lightning's amazing. Greg Ginn is clearly amazing. And but watching them do that stuff, it just really impressed on me that that's what I wanted to do. And so from there, I wasn't really that good of a guitarist, but I picked up bass. And then I started in all the early bands that I played in, like punk bands and crossover bands, was playing bass. And Yob was the first band I played guitar in. I always played guitar, but I wrote on guitar for the bands I was in. And so we all, collaborated on songs. And so I'd write something on a guitar, and then the guitarist would do a better version of what I wrote. But my songs would often make the cut, and then I would play bass. And I did that for a lot of years. But when I started getting really into like, I guess back then, it was like, the stoner or the doom stuff. Mm-hmm. There was, just where I was from, there wasn't a lot of people that were into it. And I would try to get people to play with me, and it just was very difficult. And so I just started demoing out the stuff where I was playing the guitar, the bass, and the drums. And then I got a high school buddy to learn some of the stuff that I wrote, and he was a very good metal drummer. But once again, didn't know Electric Wizard or Sleep or Trouble or Pentagram or, Count Raven, back in the day and all those things. And so I just showed him all these bands and, early Grief and stuff like that. It's like, this is kind of what I'm going for, Sleep. And, but yeah, that was the first time I played guitar recorded in a band ever.
Wow. Crazy. You know who has a story almost exactly the same as Jamie, the guitar player for Broom. His whole life he was a bass player, and Broom's the first
Mm-hmm.
band that he's ever played guitar and written in guitar. So
That's
I
cool.
didn't know that. I know Jamie really well. I had no idea that he was not just a guitar player. So
Yeah, that's crazy.
well, I'm the same way. I play bass, but I don't write on bass. I write on a guitar.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. I've never been able to figure out how people. I mean, I guess you could write simple riffs on bass, but I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. Writing on guitar always made a lot more sense.
I miss playing bass. Eventually I'd like to get, a decent bass and a rig, because I see sometimes my bands, bass players sometimes come and go, and they're looking for a bassist for a tour. And I would love to be able to be like, hey,
Yeah.
let me try. I'd love to do it. I mean, Yob has a, semi-busy touring schedule, but we try to have some air and breath in there, not just, beat it to death. It keeps us excited, keeps people, excited to come see us for as long as that's a thing. And, but I think about it. I think about like, man, I would love to just,
I'll do it.
get back into bass again. I love it. I miss it. Yeah. Just time and money.
Not needed in Yob because you have one of the best, but
yeah, Aaron's amazing. It's true.
you
and Aaron can just swap places.
You're spoiled, but
I know it.
The world needs more people who actually love playing the bass. It's not uncommon too. Like Billy Anderson plays. He'll fill in and play bass. He's playing for High Tone right now. Or Greg Wilkinson down at Earhammer. He's playing for Autopsy, I think. So Greg, both of those guys crush. Yes. Yeah. I love Greg. We talk about Greg's hair a lot. It's a common topic of.
Greg has great hair.
For bald guys like us, it's
he's definitely
upsetting.
he is aging gracefully. That is for sure. Yeah.
It is funny to think that, like, Eugene, Springfield, for people who don't know, it's like about an hour and a half south of Portland on 5. That there wasn't really like a stoner or doom scene, because Portland right now is like the center of the universe for that stuff. And and it is slowly.
But even back then, it was sparse. It was there. It was there. Certainly more than. I mean, it was certainly one of the earlier spots between when Witch Mountain and Iomi Stubbs and Rob Wrong was the moderator for StonerRock.com back in the mid to late 90s and even into the early 2000s.
Oof, he probably moderated me once or twice.
Yeah. Him and El Dano. And Dano would come down from Canada and hang out in Portland, and they would do parties. And the first show we played up there was like in 2000 with Witch Mountain. and that was stonerrock.com current.
Yeah.
But even then, it was like, we played these shows, and some of them were legendary. I mean, like Electric Wizard, Orange Goblin. We're talking like 2001, and there'd be 300 people there.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah.
We had High on Fire in Eugene, and there was 80 people, maybe 60. And we had a show that was Electric Wizard, Sons of Otis, Unearthly Trance, and Yob. And there was probably 100 people there.
Oh. Well, those 100 people had an amazing experience. That's
they tell that tale today.
There were only 100 of us. I'm one of them.
I saw them win. Yeah, those are always the best stories.
Yeah, it took that massive wave of relocation from the Bay Area up into Oregon for the whole scene to sort of transplant itself. I mean, that's where Billy was down here. Melinda, there's so many people that
totally. We played tons of shows with Subarachnoid Space.
Yeah.
Back in the day, and yeah,
that's crazy. So, did you have you and Nathan known each other like a really long time? It seems like
Carson.
Nathan,
Yeah, we have. I mean, again, it was really stonerrock.com that I think first introduced us to each other. Though Nate lived in Eugene, and he was more on the punk / industrial side of things. And there was kind of a fairly strong industrial scene here that was like kind of, I don't know, genres are tricky anymore, but like kind of like a post-hardcore / bunch of guys with half their head shaved hitting metal, and like literally, as well as like the band playing but there was a very popular scene here for that. And he played in a band called Holy Rodent that was kind of in that vein. And then when he moved to Portland and then, started doing, Witch Mountain and then Iomi Stubbs. And we just kind of got introduced to that all at once via stonerrock.com. And when Yob sent in our demo, which was really at that point, it was just me and my friend that did studio drums. And that was when I first met Rob and Nate. And then Nate booked our first show in Portland. And that was how we started to get to know each other.
Yeah. It's funny, man. I think back to, there was a time where when I was at work, not working, I had either All That's Heavy or stonerrock.com up, like websites up, just scrolling, like drooling over records and buying some stuff. Because we got, here especially right here in San Jose and eventually Oakland, we got an early dose of it, right? There was those bands were here and they were unavoidable. So I was hyper aware of what was going on at that time. Not clear that it was new to everyone else, that they weren't just lucky enough to be in the same rehearsal space as Sleep or whatever. That was just life here. So
what band from that era that nobody talks about and they should? Operator Generator.
You want to know who Operator Generator's number one fan?
Oh man, that's a band that people just don't know, and it's. The people who know, of course, the cliche thing, but like that band was amazing, not just on record but live.
I say
incredible.
Now, if you throw Polar Fleet on and tell anyone this is a brand new record from a brand new band, they'll go,
yes,
I believe it.
I'm in. So it's true.
We're good friends with a bunch of those guys. So Mitch French, who was the singer, and our guitar player, Carl, go way back. Mitch is staying at Carl's house right now. And Mitch's son, Lucas, has a band called Laserbeam. He and Mitch had a band together called Burn the Insects. Lucas is like a prodigy.
Okay.
So he's like all the Laserbeam stuff he's written, recorded, played every single instrument. Like he's a little warlock.
That's good too.
And then Tom Choi, from Asbestos Death and the bass player.
It Is I, right?
Yeah, and Joe Tucci. Like after that fell apart, I went and started jamming with those guys a little bit. So yeah, that band is very near and dear to me. And Stoner Steve, our buddy Stoner Steve, actually, he's got writing credit on the back for Acquaintance and Natharack. I think the last song, the like kind of trippy psychedelic. I've listened to this many times. And then our good buddy John Boy was the second drummer. And he was on tour with them when the band fell apart. They fell apart in the middle of a tour with Mastodon.
I remember this, actually.
Yeah, after 9/11. Mitch was always challenging, we'll just say. Mitch would admit. He actually came and visited, and we were outside the practice studio. He was with his son, and he was like, I'm going to try and calculate how much beer I drank in my entire life. And he roughed it out to a swimming pool full of beer.
Wow.
So,
that's crazy.
But he's actually doing really good. He's cleaning up and back here in San Jose with friends and family, and so it's good.
Well, do you see him?
Oh yeah, I do.
Tell him I said hey.
I will. I gave him a pedal board because he's trying to get his pedals back together, and I had a board that I wasn't using, so I just gave it to him, and we'll see what he pulls. He's played a couple shows with Laserbeam even in the last month or so, so he's getting there.
Awesome.
But yeah, I'll tell them they'll be stoked, and I'm stoked that came up because that to me is that is the quintessential San Jose stoner band that nobody knows about.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but the lore that I have been that was told to me is, when you're talking about like Asbestos Death and Sleep Volume 1 and those, they all grew up together. And Matt and Tom were acquaintances back then and both played guitar. And I mean, Tom and Matt are obviously very different players, yet when you hear Art of Self-Defense and you hear Polar Fleet, you're just like,
I get it.
It's cut from the same cloth.
Well, it's funny too, because Carl, our guitar player, fits right into that picture because after Sleep broke up, Matt and Carl got together and we're playing in what was then called Fireface, which evolved into High on Fire, but it was two guitars. And they have some tendencies and some techniques that they both kind of worked on together that ripple through all of our music, but also everything Matt has done since then. And it's such a trip to hear stories about how that stuff was sort of created and how the ethos of the playing and even of the band was sort of cemented. There's a picture of Carl the day that Dez tried out to play drums, of the four of them together playing. And it's just like, fuck, man, I wish I could have heard what that band would have sounded like with two guitar players. But in the end, they were just two sheriffs, and there was room for one sheriff, and so Carl just stepped away. But I would still love to hear it. The two of them
That's
together
cool.
could have been magical.
Yeah. Speaking of old albums,
oh yes,
I think I could be mistaken, but Catharsis turns 20 this year, right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah,
2003, I think. Yeah.
Any
2003? It was 2000. Yeah, I should know this. That's how much I pay attention. People tell me how things. I'll get an update. I'll get an update from Weedian or something. They're like, "Oh, this record is X number of years old on this day." Yeah. I'm like, "Oh,
cool."
Like I really don't know, but
don't keep track. They're not like
celebrate
their birthdays.
Well, and the thing about like Elaborations of Carbon and Catharsis is, both of those records were, it was, significantly, it was just independent labels, very small independent labels. And so you turn something in and then a year later or a year and a half later, in some cases, it would finally come out. And, it's just people's passion and they got to come up with money. And I think with Catharsis, we recorded that at the very early 2002, and it took nearly a year for it to come out, or over a year, I think. But yeah, 2003. So there you have it. Crazy.
Yeah, the official listing, at least here, says Elaborations of Carbon is 2002.
Oh, okay.
So
that's it. Yeah,
that's 20 years old. but this was recorded.
Yeah, and I want to say that we started recording that at like the end of 2000.
Wow.
Yeah, so it took a while.
Isn't it amazing how much even that process has changed in the 20 years since you recorded that record? I mean, I don't know what your process is like in the studio, but it's shocking to me how much easier it is now to get tones, to get up and running, to get stuff recorded, to get stuff mixed. You know, the advancements in technology, but then just like the advancements in the people who've been working on all this gear and working
for sure.
with the software for so long is pretty.
No, it was a lot of trying to convince people that didn't understand what you were doing of what you were doing.
Yeah.
And then like, no, we want it to sound like that. And no, we want this. And no, we don't want heavy vocals, heavy drums, guitar back, bass back. You know, like the 80s kind of, or mix, you know, we don't want that. We don't want the early 90s grunge mix. We want guitars forward, drums a little back, vocals a little back, bass filling out the bottom. And they're like, oh, this sounds weird. And I'm like, yes, that is it. That is correct. That is the thing.
Although if you went and re-recorded all of those and replaced the snares with a great 90s piccolo snare so we could get that 90s alt drum sound, we
got a little bit of that on Elaborations. You know, we were, you know, that's the other thing too, is it was the Wild West. It's like, on one hand, it's like you're getting these records that are just so amazing, but you know, I think there's a lot more, like you're saying, I think common knowledge around this is what they did and this is how they did it, and then within that, then there's the wiggle room to be creative, but you're having the same conversation. Back then you'd be like, you're just trying to dodge and weave with what's there, and there's what things sound like on the record in the part that your ears are picking out, versus if you're really looking at it technically, maybe guitars aren't as loud as you think they are. There's this perceived volume or this perceived level of distortion that actually it's not as crazy as you think, and so there's a lot of swings and misses back then, just trying to figure out how to do it in your hometown.
Was there an engineer or producer in Eugene that was working with bands, or did you guys just kind of have to wing it?
Well, I worked with a guy named Jeff Olson, and he had a studio called Dogwood Recording, all analog, and I worked with him, and just in the process of being around him every day and you know, gearing up to record this thing, he's like, well, I'll record it. And I was like, well, I want to record it with you. And he was a buddy. And so I just sent him a ton of records and said, this is what we're going for. And he's like, wow, this is kind of okay. Let's do our best. Let's do our best with this. And so we recorded the demo, Elaborations of Carbon, Catharsis. We tracked Illusion of Motion, Unreal Never Lived. We tracked the Great Cessation, though that was Sanford Parker that came in to engineer. And we did the Midian record, and we did Atma there.
Wow.
And then, so we did it all at the studio until he decided he didn't want to do it anymore. And then, you know, where we've been recording, which is Billy Barnett and Gung Ho Studio, we tracked it Dogwood, but then we mixed the Unreal Never Lived, we didn't mix the Great Cessation there. Sanford took that to Chicago and mixed it from there. But Billy Barnett mastered it, the first version of it. But we mixed the Illusion of Motion, Unreal Never Lived. He mastered the Great Cessation. He mastered the first version of Atma, but then did currently the remix of Atma. So the mixes of like Illusion of Motion, Unreal Never Lived, and then of course we tracked and mixed Clearing the Path to Ascend and Our Raw Heart with Billy Barnett. And then after all of that, he went back to the Atma and then did a complete remix. And then we gave him the original one and just said, look, a lot of it's a flawed mix, but a lot of people like it. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
Let's just make it sound volume wide and big and thick, and let's get the drum sounds better, and let's get, and so he went in and did the Atma remix, and I was dragging my feet on this. Like Aaron and Travis really wanted to do it, and I was really nervous about doing that sort of thing. But I'm so glad that we did. I'm really satisfied with that record. And the thing about it too, I'm kind of going on a little bit of a tangent, but those are songs that we've always played live. And as soon as we wrote them, but it was just a production that, like, we got what we were going for, which is kind of this raw, we wanted like this kind of almost like early 90s, mid 90s doom recording. Mm-hmm. And we got that, but it was like, man, but we've just done so much more since then without losing the teeth. Like we have all the things. And so how do we get, and Adrift in the Ocean sits, as far as our epics go, it sits with Marrow or Ara Hard or The Great Cessation, but how do we get it dynamically to sit production wise with those records? And the answer was, well, just give it to Billy Barnett in the pandemic, because we're like, well, what are we going to do? And so we did that, and I'm so glad that we did. But point being, it's all like, it's Jeff Olson, Billy Barnett, Dogwood Recording, Gung Ho Studio. The only time that we sent anything outside of town as far as mix and mastering is when we work with Sanford. But Sanford's a bud. He's a friend. He totally gets it. We're really good friends. And it was still tracked in Eugene. So it's just, everything's still stayed in Eugene. We have yet to travel anywhere to track anywhere else yet in our entire discography.
That's crazy, because you would think you would have done your turn with Billy, or or out in Salem with Kurt, or Sanford makes a lot of sense for sure. Even actually, I'm not going to make a recommendation, but because of what he does as an engineer is he's going to kill me. Andy Patterson.
Oh yeah, I know Andy.
Sub Rosa.
Of course.
So
yes,
and Andy just tries to be the best engineer he can be, and just capture the sound and the power of the music, and not fuck around with it too much. And
just the Sub Rosa albums alone are testimony to his abilities, for sure.
For sure.
It is a weird thing, and you're right. I mean, everybody that you mentioned is amazing, and I have records that have been recorded by all of those people. And I think what we keep kind of coming back to is, when we're home, we get to really climb into records in a way that doesn't involve, we get to have all of our gear.
Yeah.
We're walking in with people that we've been working with in some cases for over a decade. And none of us are satisfied completely with what happened last time.
Yep.
And so ultimately we're happy with it, and that's why we're all back together again. And yet we're looking at a new chunk of music and a new moment in time. And luckily, between the band and Billy Barnett, we're just, we're not resting on what we did. It's like, okay, well, that was then, this is now. But we're not having to explain to each other, well, what's your style? What's the way you like to do this? How loud do you need to be? What's the, well, we love this from last time, so let's start there. And we just got to keep building on the thing that we did. And, but then there's also just a level of comfort that is
completely,
it's so, I'm not saying that we'll never make a different decision, because who knows?
Who knows?
That's what's worked up till now, and I'm at least sonically, I'm pretty happy with all those records.
Yeah, the band has such a strong, obvious point of view, and I think a lot of times, bands go looking for that kind of help when they're unsure of what it is that they're doing, even just a little bit, right? And think like, if we have someone with some experience or some knowledge, maybe we can get to where we think we can be, or we can figure out what it is we're trying to make here. Not like the 80s, the mega producers handing me like, here's your song, do this that way. But just someone with an ear who's been in the room with a lot of bands who can go like, all right, here's what I think you need.
that's a real thing. I mean, that is a real thing. And so, yeah, I mean, certainly you'll see bands that occasionally get caught up in the gears of the machinery, but I think overall, especially in this style of music, when you just have people that are, nobody's becoming a millionaire, and at the end of the day, you look at our record collections and we have a lot of the same stuff in common, and there is that kind of cut from a similar cloth feeling where nobody wants to do bad work, and certainly nobody wants to feel like they've lost it, like they've lost an edge, or they've lost a vitality. And so I think that keeps people kind of hungry and humble. And at least in our scene, like a lot of the people that I meet that write and record records and are producers, I mean, like Billy Anderson's a clear example of somebody who's obviously got a discography that is, speaks for itself. Yeah, I just don't ever get the feeling that he's, I mean, I think he feels, it's almost like when comedians, like, they're as good as their last show kind of thing. And so they just take it really seriously that moment of getting on there and doing their best and winning that room or whatever it is, that like they can have 30 shows in a row, but the one real duffer room, they go back to the drawing board and really look at. And so I think it's a similar thing, and we're lucky for that,
Yeah. I just think about how much some of those individuals, I wonder how responsible they are for, like, kind of the volume and quality of music in these different scenes in these different eras. After Billy left Oakland, if Greg wasn't around, what would have happened to all of those grindcore bands and extreme metal bands? Like, that shit's not easy to record. And so just the existence of this one person allows, like, hundreds of bands to, like, get their recordings done and flourish even. It's so crazy to think of when Billy was in the Bay Area, thinking about all the great records that existed because he was here. He was reasonably priced. Like, people could afford him. People can still afford him. That blows my mind that these people have made a concerted effort to, like, not be out of reach of their peers, because that's what we're all, peers. And it's like, sure, if you want to record with Billy, he's great, and if we want to record with him, as long as he likes the material, great. It's pretty charming. There's, like, seems to be a lot less kind of cutthroat behavior in our world than in some other parts of music, and maybe I'm just missing some of it. I'm sure it's there, but it seems like a pretty supportive group.
It's there. I think it just gets it gets corrected.
Yeah, there you go.
I think it just gets corrected and good. I mean, fuck, man, I don't know. School is always in session. And so, you have your highs, you have your lows, you have your good moments, you have your bad moments, and the people that seem to stick around are the ones that turn that stuff into wisdom. And then those people still stick around and stick around and stick around, and people fall away, and some people just keep coming. And, I'm not saying that falling away isn't wisdom, but I think the people that stick around, they do have some wisdom. And especially in these scenes that you're talking about, where it's still a matter of passion.
Yep.
It's still a matter of, it is interesting that, like, this isn't something that existed in the Storyline.com days for like bands to make a living from the music. There was, Caius, but I think, even like bands like Fu Manchu, they were touring on a shoestring and in a 12-seater van. And so, if you look at 2022, there are bands that are playing for big crowds. And once again, it's not Nickelback, right? That's not like,
It doesn't need to be, though.
I just said that. It's just sounded funny to me, but it's not like it's not arenas, but it's enough. And it's certainly more than any of the old school folks that are around now. They never foresaw that.
Yeah.
They just kept doing what they were doing for long enough that when people started digging into their discographies, they're going, whoa, this is a lot of passion.
Yep.
And it was with the support of a loving audience, but it wasn't a big one, but it was art. Like it was being artistic. And, you know, and I hate to use the ART word because things can start sounding funky pretty quick, but I think it is fascinating. Like, you know, for Yob, for example, like we made so many mistakes along the way and shot ourselves in the foot in like epic ways, you know, not necessarily through addiction or something like that, but just not really like doing what we're doing now was never the goal. You know, I mean, I had a family I was raising, we all had our lives, and we just had this passion to play music, and somewhere along the line, it just changed. And it's not like VH1 behind the scenes where, you know, it's like rock stars or something. And we're talking about our rehab stories, but it's like, but it's certainly gone much farther than I would have ever imagined. It was just a crowd that changed around it. And so you do see some bands that it's like, you know, when I remember like seeing promos back in the 90s, because you had all the big bands, right? Like Guns N' Roses and Nirvana. And then you would see labels throwing bands against, you know, like spaghetti against the wall to see what would stick, and kind of like almost who is the next contestant on The Price is Right. And so you see a little bit of that, but at the end of the day, it's still, for the record, for the people that are eating up the music, the substance matters. And so it's still like this feeling and passion and, you know, are you cracking my heart open? Are you making me come to tears? Are you making me, you know, want to grab some stranger that I don't even know and just go, what is happening right now? And
persistence,
like, that matters. Yeah.
I think persistence is a lot of it. And Melvins are a perfect example of that. Like, that's music that nobody should like, objectively. But they just fucking stuck it in your face for so long that everybody was like, this is great. Maybe I don't like all of it. You know, they were pretty fucking prolific, but
what happened was they made one album that everybody loved. Yeah. And then people dug in deeper and it was like, was this the same band?
Yeah,
they just wouldn't give up.
Some relentless spirits for sure. Yeah. And the where it's like they're just very rehearsed and they're putting stuff out there and they're going on tour, and then just the luck and opportunities come because they're ready.
Yeah.
Like they're just out there and doing it. And that fearlessness certainly makes for things where you're like, oh, not for me.
Yeah.
But then there's some things where it's like, whoa, there they are.
This is very much for me.
Speaking of not for me.
Oh, yeah, we should listen to music for sure.
Should we listen to some new bands?
Yeah, I was just going to say, though, what was I going to say? I'm old, too.
I'm bringing this with me because I'm going to go grab one more beer. So.
Awesome. Smart man.
So you know what it is that I'm doing.
We love a walk and talk. We get a few. We did an epic 4-hour episode for the new year with John Carbone from Moontooth, and he must have the world's smallest bladder because we did walk and talks to the bathroom I don't know how many times.
Well, yeah, I'm not quite there yet, but I am going on 52, so we'll see.
Yeah. What I was going to say was, I loved the general public's reaction because that Chris Cornell tribute concert and show was so big, and everyone knew everyone, and then there was buzz just up on the stage, and the general public is like, who the fuck is this guy? And he's like, you don't understand. I have more reason to be here than anyone else on this stage. This is more in my soul than you guys could ever even imagine. And he just lived through it long enough that he just carved out an existence for himself.
That's amazing.
All right. Yeah. So music.
All right.
So we had some bands submit some tunes to us. I'm going to share my screen so that you can get a look at what we're looking at here. The first band, I believe, is called Ard, but although it is a letter from a different alphabet that I'm not sure I understand. So let me know if you can see that. It has a little schwa, a little
I like the art.
Thing
it's
in the
really
middle.
Cool.
Yeah, the art. For those of you not watching on YouTube, we got a couple monks sitting around a casket. It's like a woodblock kind of etching drawing. It's Pretty cool.
Yeah, I like the art.
Yeah.
It's really cool art.
All right. These guys, what do we know about them?
I don't know. What do we know about them?
I'm going to guess they're Welsh.
You gonna guess that?
Yeah. There's a word there that looks very Welsh to me. Winterfleeth, with lots of L's and Y's. All right. So the song is called Burden Foretold. They are Ard, Northumbria. Okay. So they are from Northumbria, which is in the UK somewhere. And here we go.
All right.
I almost don't want to stop it because I want to hear where it
goes.
I want to see where it goes next. I wonder if the whole thing is done in like monk chants and spoken word like that. I don't know. So one thing that grabs me right away with a song like that is I love a like soaring twin lead over that sort of the big, vast, epic doom. That's why I love Chemist so much, because they give you that doom that you love, but then they give you those like harmony leads, and that like the little metalhead in me gets so excited to hear the nerdy guitar work.
It hits me like that first little bit there. It reminded me, especially with like the kind of vocal harmony where there was that baritone vocal in there too. Yeah. It reminded me a little bit of like Solstice, but also with that kind of epicness and slower quality of like Warning, or even like I'm thinking mostly on the UK side of doom metal. So Solstice and Warning, and but you hear kind of like that that melancholy grab of like earlier Pallbearer too. And you could tell the vocal too, like there was like that mid-range vocal and then quite a bit of lower, and then there was some other kind of vocals sitting in there too. It was very, very nice. I liked it.
Yeah, so this is a one-man project.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Created by composer and musician Mark Deeks, revolves around the legendary relics of the famous Northumbrian Saint Cuthbert and their long journey. All right, so we got a story here.
Wow.
About the Romans conquering England. This is fascinating. I want to know all about this. It reminds me, we ran into a band that we fell in love with called Cavern Deep that's also doing like baritone and bass in the vocals, a Swedish doom band. The first record they put out was this, epic story about a traveler who goes into a cave and, this like taking either historical events or like a fully formed story and writing an album around it will always please the deep inner nerd in me.
Deep nerd.
my very deep nerd. All right, well, I want to
read that second paragraph. That is amazing.
Okay, Mark Deeks, who earned his PhD in philosophy on the topic of national identity in Northern and Eastern European heavy metal. Holy shit. Is also a member of leading UK black metal stalwarts Winterfleeth, which
are an amazing band.
I don't know them.
Oh, really?
Well,
okay. I will know them.
There's some joyful homework.
Okay.
To dig into.
Good.
Yeah.
He's supported by Wolsensman Mastermind Dan Cap on guitars and backing vocals, Atavis drummer Callum Cox, and Spellbound.
Atavis is also an amazing band.
Yeah.
They're a lot more in like the crushing category. Winter Phillip is, they have the black metal, but they're very epic. Winter Phillip is kind of hard to describe to their credit. But yeah,
some of my best bands are described with exactly that phrase.
Yeah.
Hard to describe.
To their credit. Yeah, that's the important part. All right, well let's listen to a little bit more. I mean, it is a 7-minute song. We're not going to get the whole thing, but
3 minutes.
All right, yeah, we'll scoot forward a little bit.
Sure.
That falls into the category of I love it now and I want to see it done live.
I don't want to see it live. Yes.
Oh shit.
Yes, exactly. That's really cool.
Yeah.
There was like some cool like string plucking going on in the background that was really standing out to me.
Yes. Yeah, apparently
there's
this is the cellist. Cellist Joe Quayle from My Dying Bride delivers the coup de grace. Not enough cello and metal. Jackie from Graceon.
Yeah.
Please join more bands.
Oh man. Yeah, that's like Jackie is like not only just in her own bands, but just like the secret weapon in so many bands. It's just like from Asunder and it's just so good.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but you're about to see her do that same thing again, because she has essentially joined Broom as the unofficial fourth member.
Okay.
And
well, her and her husband, Aaron, God, they're so great. That's really exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. So
because Aaron was in that band Giant Squid. I don't know if you know that band.
I did listen to and see Giant Squid. I can't. I shouldn't say too much. I assume she'll be there at your show. She has played all of the shows they've played so far.
The last 3.
I'm very excited. What I was talking about with the baritone vocal, the Solstice album is New Dark Age, and there is a track on that album where there is a singer who's doing this soaring mid-range, and then the vocalist does this baritone vocal that's like this, I don't want to, I may start talking ignorantly, but it's like this kind of like Baroque kind of counterpoint vocal that is baritone, but it is like the song when Yob did the song on Atma, Before We Dreamed of Two, the one that Scott Kelly does some vocals on. Well, there's the first vocal where I do a couple of different vocals, and then the second one I put a baritone in there, and it is a Solstice. I don't want to say rip-off, but let's say
inspired.
Let's say heavily inspired by that Solstice. And so listening to this just now and hearing that baritone vocal, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that.
Yeah, well, and your homework is you need to listen to Cavern Deep, and the whole album's great. But if you just want to start with one track, listen to Waterways, which is like 2/3 of the way in, and
Cavern Deep.
Where both singers sing, and Max starts out. They submitted and we loved it, and then he ended up being a guest. One of the main guys in the band, Max Malmer, was in a metal band in Sweden that was pretty popular called Zonaria. It was a totally different kind of genre, but this is his passion project. So it's
I'm into just about every subgenre of metal, pretty much.
Yeah.
Good.
I've spent a lot of time.
All right. Hard.
Yeah, it's funny how many guests we have. They're like, "Yeah, I don't really listen to metal anymore. I play it, but I don't listen. But I don't really listen to it anymore."
I go through almost every day I go through Bandcamp wormholes.
Oh, good.
And I'm still a pretty big like death metal fanatic, and also like so I love black metal, but I'm not all of it grabs me, but I still really love black metal, and certainly blackened death metal, and even some of the war metal stuff, though you start getting into some problematic things there.
Indeed.
Exactly.
But so it's I try to be careful with what I'm taking into my headspace. But like, for example, I recently discovered this death doom band from Germany called Cryptic Brood, and they are incredible.
Cryptic Brood. All right.
Yeah, they had this album called The Outcome of Obnoxious Science, and it's, the thing about them is it kind of reminds me a little bit of like Autopsy, in the sense of it's fairly raw, but the recording sounds like I don't know how many overdubs there are on it, like as like guitar is kind of in the middle and pan to the right, and maybe you hear a little bit on the left, and then the bass is panned left in the headphones, but then panned a little bit to the right, and then there's the drummer in the center, and it sounds like a live band that's extremely well recorded.
Oh, wow.
Not polished, but very well recorded. And so they do blast beats, but then they also do tempos that are like corrupted. And the way that they get from one side of that tempo to the other,
oh, I got to hear this.
It's just exhilarating, because they play with tempo like a 64 pack of a Crayola set. like they just have, it's not like 80 BPM to 40 BPM. They'll go 80 BPM and slink into like 73, and then they'll jump up to like 180, but then they'll slink down into like 10, and they do it on a dime.
Wow.
I mean, it's unbelievable. Like you can't do this if you're not in the same room. Like, and
No.
as a practicing band, this isn't like, you can't do this long distance. The thing that they do, it's like you have to be, I don't mean this as an insult to anybody. It's just, you have to be like a band, like a real band.
Yeah.
Like it's a band recording. It's 3
feat.
people that spend a lot of time together to craft these weird things, and it's so good. And then the vocals, it alternates between like the kind of the Carcass Symphonies of Sickness, where you have a low vocal and you have like a more of a screechy vocal, but they're so careful in where they place those vocals, and that it's rhythmic, it's dynamic. They're not singing over everything all the time. Like there's big chunks that's just music.
Yeah.
Like they trust their compositions, and so they don't have to sing every single second. And it's not like a singer that's like, well, I wrote all these lyrics, I have to fit them all in, whether it's musical or not. They really take the time to figure out where these things should live. It's so good.
Oh, that's awesome. Well,
so good.
Check that out.
That's a pretty glowing review. So they mess with tempo? Do they mess with time too?
Oh man, it's so crazy what they're doing. and like you just have to hear it to believe it, because like I could give you reference points of style, and to just say death doom is in the realm. Like they're death metal, but then they have doom metal elements. There's no clean singing, so it's like this one vocal and then the lower vocal. Mm-hmm. And throughout the record, they have a couple of vibes that they repeat, but for the most part, every song just has something that's refreshingly new and different. And they understand that riffs, like you can have good riffs, but that isn't necessarily a song.
Yeah.
And so like they have like all these really great ideas, but they just kind of seamlessly, for me, blend it all together in this thing. It's like a 39-minute record. And I don't know if it's the pandemic or whatever, but I've come I've become pretty ADD, and I'm in. I'm in for this album, and just to ride it through and go through all the different kind of moods that it creates.
So we'll play out this episode with one track from the record. We'll tack it on to the end. What would you pick?
Oh man, it's a record that's still pretty new to me, but I probably listened to it all the way through since I've discovered it. I don't know, at least 15 or 20 times.
Wow.
And so they're just kind of knocking it out of the park.
Have you reached out to them at all?
No.
Do you think about, I mean, 'cause we have direct experience with this, but do you think about like kind of the impact of that, how people perceive you? Because I know when you reached out to Jake from Chrome Ghost, his like head exploded. He was like so stoked. Not just because like, yeah, it's gonna get some more eyeballs on Chrome Ghost, but he was just so personally stoked that you like took the time to reach out, and it was like, it's a weird position to be in, I would imagine.
Well, I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing where you sound like a jerk if you don't acknowledge that that's a real thing.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't look in the mirror and think anything like that. But I know
this guy today.
Right. But I know it's true. There's some truth to it. And so it's partly why I'm really careful about like not wanting to talk bad about a band or something that I don't like, because it's like, maybe I just don't get it. And I don't, and as much as anything, it's like, if I don't get it, that doesn't mean they're doing a bad job, Yeah. And so, and I don't want to have that negative effect on them, particularly if they're a fan of anything that I do. And it's, I don't know. I mean, I'm still really, really, really a music fan at heart. And so, as much as, I think about songwriting and things like that, ultimately it's other people's records that get me through, not my own.
Yep.
So I try to be careful about it, but yeah, I mean, if anything, what's weird is, because Yob has become like a band that, like, I don't know. I mean, I think most people in the metal world have heard of us at this point.
Yep.
They may like us, they may hate us, whatever. I mean, I think there is a contingent that really doesn't like it, which is super 100% okay. I'm more likely to identify with them, but like, you're right. I need to work on this. But I do think about, like, there's two sides of it, where it's like, if you have this band that's like really dug in and underground, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to ruin that for them. By saying that, like, it's like, Scott Stapp, saying, oh my God, you got to check out this band, and it's like, oh no, it's over.
Oh God.
It's over for them.
I'm trying to imagine where in the multiverse you and Scott Stapp have anything in common.
Would cross over. Yeah, exactly.
Man, it's a long story, but
it's like, you guys got Yob, they're amazing.
That would be pretty awesome, actually.
I don't know, man. It's like, you don't want to be, overthinking is not a good look, but I think that ultimately I'm still truly just a fan of the things that make me happy and excited. And it could be something that's not original, but it's just, they're sticking the landing.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Where we talk about that all the time.
Yep.
Have you heard of the band Earthbong?
No. Earthbong.
Oh, okay, Earthbong is great. They have this album called Bong Rights, and it's everything that, like, I mean, there's just so many bands that do that, right? But if they were around in like the SureRock.com era, they would be legends. They would be legends.
Another
because
one
they get it.
Yeah.
They get the swing. They get the tempo. It's like they're a Bongzilla sleep milkshake, but they get it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
they are their own thing.
Yeah, there's room for that too. And another band that's like that is Green Lung. Have you had a chance to listen to those guys yet? It's like all of that has been done before, but they stick the landing so hard that it's great, and it totally resonates with people.
I agree.
All right, so we know you're on a timer, so let's listen to let's
Okay.
get through a little bit more music here. Not that I'd rather talk to you, but
no. Let me just come in and wreck your format entirely.
No, well, actually,
format?
Yeah, we don't have a format. Format is very
try
loose.
To stick to a format.
But all your
the F word. Sorry.
Yeah, all you're convincing me at this point is that we need to have you on with John the next time we do a Pass the Aux Chord.
Yeah, there
because
we
the
go.
people who are really passionate and are still consuming new music, that was the episode we did after Christmas, was like, we each curated a list of 5 bands and songs that we wanted to make the others listen to, that were things that we had fallen in love with. And so it was just about celebrating the stuff that we found last year that we really loved. And it went for a while.
Oh yeah, it was a long one.
It was rad though.
John brought 5 bands I'd never even heard
did,
of.
and
every single one of them blew my mind.
They were great. All right, so this one's interesting. The subject, we try not to read too much of the email. The subject line of his email was something like "music from Saudi Arabia," and then after that, it just said, "I just needed something to catch your attention. Please, please listen to my music if you would like to." So that's all I know about this so far, is that Mozej is from Saudi Arabia. It's mozej.bandcamp.com, Mozej, and this is like a single release of a song called Decades.
Okay.
And let's check it out. I have no idea. Go next.
I don't know. I kind of want to keep.
I know.
To see where this is going.
All right, we're 2 minutes into a 3-minute song.
Yeah.
That's one guy?
That's one guy. I still don't know where it's going, which I love.
Wow.
So Mozej is Arabic for bothersome, unpleasant, harsh, annoying, and that is okay. That's
Yeah.
And see, this is. I would never imagine something like this. And I don't know anything about Saudi Arabia, but this is not what I would ever imagine music coming out of Saudi Arabia to be like.
No.
That part of the world has some crazy music. It's a lazy comparison to begin with, but like that whole first kind of intro part was like, okay, this is like, it hit me a little bit like some kind of Sum of Converge.
Yeah, yep.
Exactly.
And or just, let's say, 90s, early 2000s post-hardcore. But I really like that, not that screams or death roars aren't human voices, because they clearly are, but so far anyway, I haven't heard any of his other music, but he didn't go there.
No, he didn't.
It's like like
it's a strained human voice.
It was almost there, but didn't go there. And that's a really cool, like one of the great things about, like, I don't know if this person would appreciate this comparison, but like the heaviest Smashing Pumpkins gets anchored with this higher vocal.
Yep.
And there's something about that where it's sparse and it's really careful with the structures. So you have this lower heaviness and then you have this clear vocal on top. Smashing Pumpkins, for what it's worth, is like the first two records are a huge influence on how I approach vocals. And so when I listen to this, I go, that it's just like, oh, it's converge, but then there's like this dynamic that exists that I appreciate. I appreciate what they're going for.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. And I had Gish on my record player this afternoon, thanks to him, because he gave it to me for Christmas. It's one of my
Gish and
all-time favorite
Siamese
records.
Dream. Yeah, Gish and Siamese Dream. I mean, I bought both of those when they came out, and they were life changers.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm only 4 years behind you, so I was like,
Oh yeah.
that was 91, right?
Yep. Yep.
That was my senior year of high school. That record was the soundtrack of my senior year.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
Gish
100%.
Gish is as good as it gets, man. That drummer Jimmy Chamberlain.
Right? We've
Jeez.
talked about this before. I went,
That guy
oh my
can
God.
work. That guy can work a snare drum. Like, geez, it's so incredible.
So the
But
only thing,
the songwriting and dynamics of that band at that time, good God, it's
it was
unbelievable.
incredible. And it was almost like every song was a drum solo, and then if he would like tamp it down a little bit so that they could get the song in. And then we were on.
Well,
tour
it's kind of like Tool in that regard, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Right.
I mean, I love Tool. I get flack for that, but fuck all y'all.
It's okay. We love them too.
That's a problem with it, but it's drum driven, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's good songs, of course, good vocals, good everything, but just gets elevated by a next level player on the drums.
Yeah. Well, another record that comes across this way to me in later listenings, I've listened to it a bazillion times and never really thought about this way until we were on tour. And when you're in the van, like late at night and everything's dark, music sounds different. I don't know what it is about like being on a long drive and being exhausted.
Yes.
And it just, the Baroness Red album is one long drum solo with some songs slammed in around that drum solo. And if you listen to it sometime with that in the back of your head, it totally changed. I was like, wait a minute, this is just a big drum solo. This whole fucking record. That guy can work a snare too. There's some really brilliant work on that record. I mean, he's a great drummer on everything, but really stands out on that record.
I'm glad you brought this up. Some late night driving records.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah. Depeche Mode, Music for the Masses.
Oh yes.
Like
Oh,
if
yes.
it's 3 a.m. and it's just dark, that's what we're talking about. You're just driving, getting to a destination. Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here.
Oh God, I'd be in tears. If I'm driving, I can't listen to it.
Yeah.
Someone else has to be behind the wheel.
True Widow, self-titled.
Yeah.
And yes, I put that in the league of the two records I just mentioned.
Wow.
True Widow, self-titled.
Okay.
Their very first record. That is
Yeah.
in the category of which we were talking about.
And that's what.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
They're playing San Francisco and Felton shows with you, right? Or are they on
Yes.
the whole tour?
It's. I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable, so I'm not going to geek out on them too hard. But True Widow is their self-titled record, and their second record, As High as the Highest Heavens, From the Center to the Circumference. It's just, words just don't really do justice to what it is that they do. I mean, you could start trying to talk about genre, and there's certainly things that are, signposts that are maybe helpful to somebody who doesn't know them. And I think they are the kind of band that either you get or you don't. But there's just a masterful quality to what it is that they do that, you know, when I start thinking about like Pink Floyd or Depeche Mode or The Cure or True Widow, to me, in my world, it's in the same category.
Wow.
And then the other late night record is Gary Newman, Pleasure Principle.
Oh yeah,
That's a great record.
that is a really good
Gary
record.
Newman. Oh man.
That's the album that has cars, right?
Yeah.
But there's a ton of other songs on that record, and the song "Me" it's so great. But like, once again, everything's dark. You're on the freeway. You're just hearing a record. It's pretty special.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's
right.
a great list. And that Music for the Masses was one of my favorite albums ever. For
so
long.
good.
My very first concert was seeing them on the Violator tour.
Oh man. Okay. Yeah.
It's fucking incredible.
That's awesome.
All right, we'll sneak in one more.
Okay.
We got a band from St. Louis, Missouri called Killing Fever, and in the email bio it said something about some of their members have been in bands like Men of Porn. So I guess I need to dig into it.
Men of Porn.
Oh yeah, Men of Porn.
That's a Mike Pat.
No, it's
that's a different.
It's Tim Moss, and in the early days, also I want to say Dale Crover maybe had something to do with that.
That's
and
right.
Certainly Billy Anderson.
Billy was involved in Men of Porn.
Yep, and we've played with them, and they were a weird and wonderful band. And you want to talk about like the stonerrock.com era? They were happening at that time for sure.
Yeah,
they're great.
We're having scheduling issues, but ultimately one of these days we're going to have Frank Kozik on, because I just got to drill him and understand kind of what that whole era was about, and you know, man's just everything Man's Ruins touched. You were there.
I sent him everything we did. We never caught his attention. It honestly didn't matter, because I just loved what he did so much. I mean, there's so many records. I have so many records in my collection that are Man's Ruin. You know, the Orange Goblin, Electric Wizard split. Certainly the earliest Acid King, which is, I mean, it's, you talk about genres, stoner or doom or whatever. That's a band. That's a Tyrannosaurus Rex that's still alive.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And that Lori and whatever she touches, I don't care. I'll be there. But like Man's Ruin, what a label.
Yeah.
And I was there for all
Generator. That was late Man's Ruin. Of course.
Yep.
Yep. All right. So this is Killing Fever from St. Louis, Missouri. Album is called Enemy of the Good.
It's got to be punk rock.
And it looks like it would be. I mean, it says right under the follow button, Big Dumb Rock.
All right.
So I'm all in for some Big Dumb Rock. The song is called Lipstick Lies. Oh, that bass is dirty. Really good.
Yeah, it's very it strikes me as like underground Seattle 90s.
Yeah, or
I'm not talking about the main bands, but like the bands that are just under the main bands.
Yeah.
And,
or I was even
it's
thinking
like,
about the grunge bands that came out of the Midwest, kind of
mm,
late 90s, as a like the response to Seattle. It's like, oh yeah, that's cool in Seattle. We got that too.
We got that too.
And there's kind of a revival of that happening right now. We're seeing, like, Hum comes out of nowhere and returns. They're
oh
incredible.
my God. Oh my
And
God.
then we keep
So,
running
I
in-
mean, I have that written down on a list because I wasn't sure what you guys were going to ask me. And so it's like, so I'm like, oh my God, I got to write down everything so that I don't seem like a total idiot trying to like search my horrible memory about what I'm listening to. But like Hum, that record, I know which record you're talking about. It's in there. Yes.
Yep.
So good.
Yes.
I listened to that record so many times this year or last
Man,
year.
that second track, it's so like, well, let's talk about this band, Killing Fever,
Yeah.
because Hum is Hum, and
Yeah.
we all love Hum, but Killing Fever's new and interesting.
Yeah.
And where are they from?
they're from St. Louis,
Missouri.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
actually reminds me.
Which is where is that where Fister's from?
I think so.
I think they might be. Yeah.
Or they're certainly from Missouri, if I remember right. Maybe Kansas City. I can't remember, but like, okay.
Yeah. What's your poll?
No, I was gonna. So it almost has like post-hardcore went two different directions. So you got bands like Quicksand and Orange 9mm and Into Another, and then you got bands that came out like later in the 90s, like this, that ended up on Revelation Records, but didn't necessarily didn't fit the whole aesthetic of what Revelation used to be with all the hardcore. But then, so this is exactly what this sounds like to me. Is it's like that late 90s Revelation Records that it's not really post-hardcore, but there's elements.
Like the guys used to be in hardcore bands, so
Yeah.
they're friends, so they get to be on Revelation.
It was like one of those where like probably two of those guys was in a hardcore band, and the other two guys played in a metal band, and then they they're like, let's just make some rock and roll.
Yeah, I mean, they look our age-ish, you know. They
Right.
they went through it the first time around, and now that's what's been kind of fun is the bands that have come back, like Godzillionaire, who like went through the 90s. I was in bands in the 90s trying to make music that sounded variations of this, and then to see it like swing all the way back around. You know, it never occurs to me. We're so dumb, right? Everything that's old is new again, and everything is going to come back. Now, you know, new metal is proving that no matter how much the general public detests something, or the music Illuminati detests something, it's coming back, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. So of course this stuff came back.
Two guys on the left were in the hardcore band. The two guys on the right were in the metal band.
Well, and it's like, I mean, I was looking at their song titles, and like, and like I relate to a lot of these titles, like dabbling led to doing. You know, that's intriguing. And word is bond. I'm curious about that. Something wrong with the sky. I think we've all been there. Lipstick lies. Somebody got burned. You know.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and
this album comes out tomorrow. This isn't even out yet.
So pick one of the other ones. If one of those titles really grabbed you, which one? I was dabbling with doing.
I'm curious about my word is bond.
All right.
I'm interested about that.
Let's hear it a little bit. Chuga chuga.
You know,
Go.
if I was the producer on this thing, all right, this is where I hang myself, right, to the public eye. I would want to be like, okay, what's the lyrics for this? Now I need you to sell me on this.
Yeah.
Like, and it's hard being a vocalist because whatever's happening with the music, as soon as somebody starts singing, that's where all attention goes to for a second.
Yep.
It's like whatever's happening, you're like, oh yeah, I'm feeling it. And then the singer starts singing. And now all of a sudden there's a spotlight on this person. And I would be like, okay, what is it that you're singing? What is it that you're feeling? Now sell me on it with your voice.
Yep.
Don't be busy trying to be a good singer. Don't be busy trying to be melodic. Be busy. Be a singer. Be melodic, but sell me on what it is that you're doing. And when I hear like that song, I immediately started thinking of like Tad.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Tad Doyle's ability to sell you on what it is that he's singing.
Yeah.
And so that was my first thought. It was like, whatever was heavy and cool and happening, when the person started singing, I was just kind of like, I hear that you're trying to be a good singer, but I don't hear what it is that you're trying to tell me.
Lacking conviction.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm not saying that, because I say so much of this with so much space around it, because it's like, maybe I'm just not getting it, or maybe, or maybe it's a style thing, and that's not illegitimate. It's like, if you're going for a style and an aesthetic, and that's what's in your heart, I don't have to understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're enjoying the juxtaposition of kind of the messiness and heaviness of the music, and then the sort of like a Boy Next Door quality to the voice. It almost reminds me of like.
But I want to feel the danger.
Yeah.
I want to hear how those two things are supposed to live in the same house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like it reminds me of Rivers Cuomo. It reminds me of like the way Weezer vocals sit in the music. And when I think he's most successful is when you drag a little passion out of him. That's why I think Pinkerton's such an interesting album, because I think he went in different places with the vocals than he's done when he's trying to craft the perfect pop song or whatever his name is.
Even on the Blue record, I mean, I hate to say it like this, but you hear the heroin.
Yeah.
Like there is something, like I'm anti, I don't want anybody to lose their life to an addiction. I don't think it's cool. And yet something about the Blue record has this, it's an immutable quality, really.
Yeah.
It's almost hard to put it into words, but like to Pinkerton, to the same thing that you're saying, it's writing these lines of melody, and it's a hard thing about vocals, because one of the hardest thing about vocals is if somebody's trying to be a good singer, you're trying to technically be good, and you can be caught up in that, and I've done it. Like when I did my Townes Van Zandt covers, I was trying to be a good singer, and man, I got to tell you, if I was going to redo those vocals today, I wouldn't do it the same way that I did it back then. I would really slow down and try to be like, okay, what is happening here? What is the vocal? What is going on? How does this relate to me? Where in my heart does this connect? And then try to put that into a vocal. And hopefully for Killing Fever, this isn't some like bummer thing, because there's so much that's fucking awesome that's going on there. And then for what it's worth, there are so many bands, once again, I'm just hanging it out here, that like, which one of us can sing the least worst?
Yeah. Don't worry, we've had this conversation many times.
And
somebody needs to sing.
right. So which one of us can sing the least worst, but they're not really putting the effort into the vocal that they would to any other instrument.
Yeah.
And all the bands that you love, with a handful of fluke exceptions, put in the work.
Yeah.
And so they put in the work one way or another.
Yeah.
And so with this band, this is a singer who's clearly put in some work. But you get also then caught in
showing the work.
Yeah, and then also like, what is the work for?
Yeah.
You know, and how do I get this vocal? How do I get this lyric? How do I make you believe it? How is it that I actually feel it outside of trying to do a performance? And I have made this mistake. So it's like I can point out all the directions where I've made the mistake, especially when I started trying to train myself to be a good singer. And then now you're just focused on being a good singer. But there are countless singers that are infinitely better than me that may or may not be enthralling. Yeah. And then you have someone like Leonard Cohen, who's put in less to no time. But it's not about that. Yeah. Or Lou Reed or Bob Dylan or, you know, Marianne Faithfull. It's more than the subtotal of
Neil Young.
Well, in my world, Neil Young is a pretty good singer, but you know, Henry Rollins but even like if you were to say Neil Young, who is a good singer, but he comes from like that folk world where you have to sell it.
Yeah. It's
a single guitar and a single voice. You better mean it.
Yeah.
You better mean it.
I think so. I missed hardcore, right? I was a prog nerd and a metal kid, and hardcore, post-hardcore passed me up until much later in life. But I think that was the lesson that they learned maybe too well, which is it's all a sales job on the vocals.
Don't only mean it.
Yeah, don't only
try.
Like
okay, well, I'm gonna switch headphones here real quick, just so you know, guys.
Oh,
okay.
So my earbuds are running out of
batteries.
So and switch.
And we're done listening to music. You're free to drop anytime. I know you had something going on.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep, totally.
Just so you know, I did a text and canceled my other thing, so I'm with you.
Oh, well, shit. All right.
Awesome.
So we're wide open for carnage.
Oh, good.
But yeah, you know, to your point, you know, there's the other side of it, right? Which is like it's like all passion, all the time, one voice, and then you don't get maybe necessarily like one thing that's great about, like, for example, Jake from Converge or like Mike from I Hate God is like, yes, they are doing a lot of screaming, but they have different kind of gears within it. It's not like just one thing all the time, no matter what. And yes, maybe you're pissed all the time, and so it's just all the time. But there's something about it that doesn't, after a certain point, becomes like hearing traffic in the background.
Yeah,
it's an abrasive noise, but you start tuning it out.
Yeah, I'll say my first experience with Converge was seeing them open for it was Converge, High on Fire, Death Clock, and Mastodon.
Oh wow, what a crazy lineup!
And I love the other three and did not know Converge. And my response to that, you know, and this could be the sound guy or whatever, was like, there's a rooster on the stage, like squawking nonstop. You know, I have come to love them, but it was
it depends on what era of Converge, but you know, like totally.
Yeah, it was funny, and it's funny now that I mean that whole group of people, like the Converge Blood Moon record, anything Steve Brodsky touches, like there's so much brilliance in that sort of brain trust that came out of Boston, and it's so amazing to see them kind of like you guys are, like Melvin's, like 20 years later, after, you know, running hard, to all of a sudden like get hit from the back with this big wave of support. It's so cool to see that happen. He probably didn't think, like, when he was first playing in Cave-In or whatever, like, yeah, someday I'm going to be on every new heavy record that comes out. In 2022, there won't be a record at the top of the list that doesn't have my hand in it somewhere. I'm going to be playing guitar for Walter and Quicksand, and I'm also going to be singing with, or whatever he's doing with Converge, and recording
of course,
a Mutoid Man record with Jeff Matz playing bass, which I cannot wait to, absolutely cannot wait to hear. So,
yeah, no, absolutely, and it's, I mean, there's room for everything under the sun if it's like, I mean, I think for, for people that are, I mean, you talk about metal, punk, stoner, doom, in all the various subgenres, I think more or less when all things are said and done, we are cut from the same cloth.
Yeah.
We just want to feel it, and we want to be convinced, and we want to go on the ride that you believe in, as the songwriter.
Yeah.
And if you believe in it, like really, 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 there are people that won't go on the ride, and that's fine. But for the people that want to go on the ride, there is a ride to be had. And for this band that we were just listening to, man, it's so close. It's like, and for that singer, I would just be like, if you need to do a little bit of training so that you can make it consistent. And this is coming from somebody who does whispers and screams and death roars and clean singing on baritone to the highs, and I have to maintain it. But I backed myself into a corner in the sense that I can't not have these colors to sing with.
Yep.
And I know someday I won't be able to do them all. But until then, I have to continually trick my body into doing it to sell the point of what it is that I'm trying to say. And sometimes it's going to be in a whisper. Sometimes it's going to be in a death roar. And I mean it. But the whole idea is like, even in a song like that's really pretty, like Beauty and Falling Leaves, that there is like we're digging in no matter what. And that's what I hope to hear from this person. It's like because it's so close.
Well,
and they can do it. I believe it.
And I really like the rest of the music was great.
It's
like,
great.
I love this.
No, and the singer is good. The
Yeah.
singer is good. It's just the singer is the thing that makes it go, oh shit, and then the singer goes and just takes it back a notch.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I think that's a
and that's okay if that's a gear shift.
Yeah.
Like if you're just taking it back for a second and then you're like, "Ugh," and then taking it through all the way. It's so close.
And I will say, Killing Fever, if you listen to this at some point, and if you've never seen Yob, I suspect some of you probably have, but if there's one band to take advice from about selling conviction on stage, like, this is the guy. Like, no, I mean, and it's, it's a common conversation. Yob is love is a common phrase, and it's like, oh, sure. And then you go and see you for the first time and you go, oh, fuck, I get it now. It's a real emotional experience to watch a show. It's not like sometimes I'm watching them just stoked at all the crazy riffs, or whoa, look at that crazy solo, or they got good banner, they there's great jokes. Like Mutoid Man's hilarious to watch because they have fucking incredible stage
jokes
banner.
For days.
But
Enslaved.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen Enslaved?
Oh no, I haven't. I guess.
Okay.
I guess.
Well, I highly recommend it.
But
for this on this point, yeah.
A Yob show is just a show that you go to and you don't talk to anyone while it's happening. I don't think we even looked at each other the whole time. We're both just like,
oh, you were there?
Yeah.
Oh,
we were both there.
Okay.
We
didn't look at each other
more than once.
I didn't know you were there.
Well,
Case in point.
My own space.
We rode in the car together. Might have been the edibles too.
Yeah. I was actually going to save this until the end, but why is Yob love?
We didn't make that up.
That just came from.
No.
See, that's perfect. That's
We
I'm
didn't
glad
say
you
that.
did.
That started somewhere else, and it carried on for long enough that when we started, I wouldn't say that we got too big for our britches, but we got too it entered a realm of like that we just like we could keep this punk, but I feel like we're selling not just ourselves, but we're selling what's possible to reach like-minded people short if we don't get help.
Yeah.
And I was starting to get burnt out because I was just wearing too many hats.
Yeah.
But the Yob is Love thing has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And so finally, when we decided, like, oh, we need an official website, what are we going to call it? And we're just like, it was almost like a tribute to the people that were holding that thought.
Yeah.
And so we said,
that's how
Yob
it
is love. Yob is love. You know, Yob is love. And it wasn't for us. I mean, that is how we feel. Yeah. I mean, we really do feel like at any given moment, like, look, we know that if you're going to climb into a crowd and climb into their headspace, in any given show, you're going to have a vast array of opinions, politics, religions, upbringing, whatever it is, various degrees of mental health, instability. It's all going to be there. And yet, for any given show of any band at any particular time, people are coming together for a reason.
Yep. People
are in a room for a reason. And so we want to, that's what we want for ourselves. And so that is what, and for us, you can start sounding trite pretty quick. Mm-hmm. You're like, well, we're trying to work out demons, or we're trying to do this or that or the other. But like, we honestly don't feel like if there's a room full of people and we're there, yes, technically, relatively speaking, there's a band and there's a crowd. But that is just that's only that's the diving board. That's just only where it starts. But whatever happens in that room, we all did it.
Yeah.
We all did it together, and we're just all cut from the same cloth. Once again, you go through our record collections, you're like, yeah, you know, we're all in the same-ish range, and that's where it's at. And so, and ultimately, it's crazy that in 2022 that like the concept of like love is still so radical.
Yeah.
And so it can be so off-putting and so like saccharine seeming. And yet it's what everybody, even the most misanthropic person who just only loves their dog, that is what they are driven by.
Yep.
Is their love that they get to interact with that creature. And so, you know, we're not here to say how you're supposed to express your love, but we just want to be in service to the thing that we're driven by.
Yeah, and that's how it always read to me, is like a recognition that
that rhetoric is probably just horrible, but like that's where it's at, you know.
No, it's a recognition that it's a shared experience, that going to a show and listening to that music is about the organism that exists, that is made of the band and the crowd. Comedians talk about this a lot too. Stand-up comedy is very similar. Like, they have a routine and they've written it out, but really in the moment, it's a conversation between them and the crowd ebbs and flows, and they read the crowd and adjust. And maybe that doesn't mean they change the words, but there are subtle changes that happen. And I think a good show is like that too.
You feel like you're part of it.
And I just think it's never more apparent that it's a shared experience than when for me at least, than when I'm at one of your shows. Like that, I become acutely aware that like, oh wow, we're all going through this together. This is awesome. So
this is true.
There's no pit to violently murder each other in. You're not worried about your physical safety. You know, you're not like that. You know, guarding people.
We do get pits. We do get pits, but only to our slowest stuff.
Yeah.
And it's so ironic. Like, I grew up in the punk scene. I grew up in pits. I had to be broken of pits, like as an older person, where it's like, oh, okay, I can't really do that anymore, and tried to, because it's just how I feel. I grew up in the punk scene, where it's like, oh God, you know, how do I get this feeling out? But like, when we'll play certain songs, it's crazy what a chunk of crowd will do with that vibe. And it's, you know, and And so if anything, we're just kind of like occasionally we'll just be like, hey, you know, so everything's cool, right?
Yeah, just checking in.
Good?
Everybody's
Yeah.
good.
We're all
Yeah.
still loving. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're in a pit at a yob show and you're not picking people up off the floor, you're doing it all wrong.
Yep.
All right. Well, good. So hey, I did pull one other piece of music here, so let's go ahead and listen to it. And this is a lovely band called Coma Hole, which is uncomfortable to say.
Okay.
Okay. And the album art is uncomfortable to look at. It's an illustration of a woman with her fingers in her eyes and blood running down her face.
Wow.
Right. All right.
They are from Westerly, Rhode Island. So
Rhode Island.
yeah, and the song is called Old Climb.
All right.
And I think this is a record that's not out yet or just about to come out. Yeah, this is like a single. All right, here we go. Coma Hole. All right, so for those of you listening, that's a two-piece.
That's a two-piece.
Yeah.
I just
Whoa, that's amazing.
That's
awesome.
That's a singer who's playing bass and a drummer, and that's it.
Wow.
What? Really?
Yeah, and looking on the floor, looks like she got a pretty giant pedal board down there.
Yeah.
I wonder if she's triggering those guitar harmony parts live. I'm always fascinated by how two pieces set their gear up so that they can like expand the sound, especially when they play live.
Here's a supported by review that I like by the Riff Sniffer that says, "Fans of Year the Cobra will enjoy this."
I mean, on the surface, that's kind of an obvious. Do you like two pieces with a female singer who also plays bass?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, yeah, certainly there's like some harmonic content in that recording.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly didn't pick up on that, and I just got caught up in not just the energy and the vocal, which is great, but also I was just like kind of remarking to myself about the vocalist who just had this really good kind of melding with the music, and so it just felt like just going on the ride that they intend. And but yeah, I didn't even think about the fact that there wasn't a guitarist. That's pretty cool.
No, and it's interesting. This appears to be the first thing they've ever released on Bandcamp, and it's currently the only thing on here.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
I want to find out more about them.
It's only
coming out swinging.
Swinging hard.
Yeah.
Watch out, big business.
Yeah.
You're not the only game in town. Love those guys.
You guys are in trouble.
No, they're not. Believe it or not, there's room for more than one band on Earth.
No, it's not.
We can all be successful.
No, we can't.
Impossible.
Impossible. We have to hate everything that's not us.
Yes.
Well, that was really cool.
That was really cool. Yeah,
I'm going to scoot it to the end. I'm kind
To the end.
of curious how they wrap this up.
See where they're going. Yeah.
okay, drummer, we get it. You took your lessons and you practice a lot.
You know what the funny thing is, though? Look at the picture of the band. That is not what that drummer looks like on stage normally. Because, I mean, it looks like he's just banging out some smooth rhythms.
Yeah.
It's just like chill.
Dude.
He hasn't broken a sweat yet. Like, I'm guessing that normally it's just like, the guy's like animal back there.
That guy's drenched in sweat.
Oh, yeah.
That's the deal, right? Like,
yeah.
Like you can, I mean, I love dressing up. You know, I love having, you know, it's like, I love seeing, you know, stage photos and having the look, but you never know.
Yeah.
When you're seeing somebody like, have you ever seen Black Cobra?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
If they're just out in the crowd, you don't know what
you don't know who they are.
You don't know what it is that they got in them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
Oh, that's what I loved about seeing 8 Bells. Like, Melinda looks like one of my kids' like school teachers, and then she's just out there like vomiting her soul out on stage, and you're just like, holy fuck.
Well, and she's a vet.
Yeah.
Like she's a vet the way Matt or anybody is a vet.
Yep.
Like she's been around that long, just sticking the landing whole time.
Just doing it.
Sticking the landing. That's the theme for this episode.
Stick that landing. All right. I do actually. If you have a couple more minutes, I have one other thing that I just got is very exciting. So you have grown kids. Some of them are into music.
Yes.
My bandmate from my first band in high school, and his son came on because his son's now an up and coming drummer in a death metal band in Idaho called Texas Ketamine. So. They just had their very first tour. They just self-recorded their very first record, and he sent me a link to the record. And I think they're incredible, but they're at that so raw stage. Like I was talking to Nolan last night, and I was like, do you guys have an EPK? And he's like, I don't know what that is. I was like, okay, I'll back up a little bit. Like, did you guys like send this out to anybody in the press to review? Did you? And he's like, I don't know. It comes out on Friday, and then people will. They're just like so early on, and there's so much potential, and anytime they play live they get such a killer reaction. It's like proud uncle. It's like so exciting to see the next generation like go through the same shit that we went through and they're kind of doing it the same way. You know, it's very much like, I didn't have an EPK in my first band. Like, who does? Nobody
Right.
does. Some people get coached enough that they do, but so he just sent me a copy of their record, and I am absolutely fascinated. Because mostly what I've seen are like shaky videos, you know, from live shows. And they did it like all themselves. There's somebody had some gear and they figured out how to use it and recorded it. So
that's it.
Yeah, I love it. So here, let me find it.
It's good to see you had it prepared.
Huh?
Just kidding.
No, I just thought of it. Like, I want to listen to this. Where did he send it? Oh,
so while Jeff is looking,
he sent it to my
that,
email. Yeah. What do you have?
You know what? I want to know. I've always been curious. Where did the name Yob come from?
It's, you know, when I tell people what it is, it's like, you know, but like I got it. I mean, way back in the day, keep in mind, this band wasn't supposed to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Like it really wasn't. And I just wanted something. I was like, look, I know that whatever it is that I do, I want it to be able to grow. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, I was watching cartoons and the old Looney Tunes cartoons. And there was the Chuck Jones cartoon called Rocket Bye Baby. And it's a video, or it's a cartoon where, for whatever reason, like there's 2 expectant families and there are babies coming from the universe and they hit each other and they go opposite directions. And so a baby that was meant for Mars goes to Earth, and then an Earth baby goes somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so on Mars, his name was Mott, which is Tom backwards. And he was a Yob, which is boy backwards.
Oh, Mott the Yob.
And then we did this stone logo from, 1999s to rock.com, and we're like, oh, that looks cool.
Yeah.
That looks heavy. And we'll just make that what we are.
Nice.
Yeah.
And
That's awesome.
and it's crazy that origin is like that it's stuck. And for what it's worth, we've gotten over the years, like, I mean, in the UK, yobs are like,
It means like
punks.
you're an asshole. You're like a
right.
You're
That's
like
right. Yeah, like you're the person. You're the person at the football game that causes an entire set of bleachers to go to hit the ground, or
Exactly.
or you're the group of people that are causing trouble.
Yep.
And so we would get messages from the UK going, that's a punk band or an oi band name. That's not a doom metal band name. But then we would get messages from like Eastern Bloc from Russia, and they'd be like, oh, that's fucking awesome because yob over there means fuck. And so there, but it was a little bit of like also perplexed, like how does this music equal fuck? But we think it's cool.
Yeah.
And then we're just like, well, okay, we're just gonna. It's getting around, and nobody's really technically truly bummed about it. And then over time, when we played with tons of UK bands, they just stopped saying anything about it.
Yeah.
And we just kept at it, and we're still doing it.
Yeah.
I think maybe the next 25 years, you switch from yob is love to yob is fuck.
No. Or just change the name of the band to Boy.
Yeah.
Play U2 covers.
That's funny. Fuck.
All right. So here, we're going raw right now. So here's the share file. Here's all
this. We get to see the files.
Here's the song titles.
Okay, what's the band called? What's the band?
Texas Ketamine.
Texas Ketamine. Okay.
So what song do we want to hear? Prime Rib. That's
Prime Rib.
Interesting.
There we go.
Slave to Nothing.
Due Process.
Due Process.
The Electrocution.
All right. I'm going to throw on Due Process. That one caught my eye.
Okay.
I think these are progressive kids living in Idaho. So
okay. They're in Idaho?
Yeah, they're in Boise.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Fucking ambitious.
This song's a lot longer than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
How old are they?
Like I think between 19 and 23. I think in that ballpark. And it's like you can't pull a song like that off really when you're our age. Like I think you have to be young to say some of that shit and have anybody take you seriously.
Well, yes and no. I mean, yes. Though, I mean, Immolation's putting out a new record, right?
Yeah.
I think where, like, this is something for me that's straight across the board, and I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I really am not. But, like, as soon as I hear people, like, cussing, I just go, you're just not being inventive.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. But, like, as soon as I hear, like, the cussing, like, I'm fucking done. I'm just like, man, there's another way to say that, you know, and then it's like, that's art, you know, and it's more than, I mean, I cuss all fucking day long, but like, you know, but I don't cuss in our music. And when I hear bands that are cussing, it just strikes me like, okay, it's so close.
Yeah.
And there are exceptions to that rule. There are some exceptions, but like, you know, I listen to like the entire discography of Black Flag. You know, I mean, it's not striking me in the ways that they're like going there. It just seems like a little like it's like if I'm cussing trying to get a point across, there's a point of that that's just a little lazy.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing that comes with maturity.
But I say that like I'm not disrespecting these kids. You know, like there are clearly like musically, aesthetically, completely not confused about what it is that they are doing. And that is super brilliant. And for this band, if they're listening to me, just rack this up to an old guy shaking a cane at the sky if you need to. And truly don't stop. Like just keep fucking going, because for most bands, really the only thing that is in their way is quitting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like ultimately, like it's a little bit of a trite thing to say, but like I heard somebody say that like luck is like preparation and persistence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like like when people say, "Oh, they're so lucky," "Oh, they just get all the breaks." It's like, yeah, but that's a tight fucking band.
Yep.
Who's just worked their shit out, and they're so good that they do get those opportunities. Not every band that's so good will get an opportunity. That's why like so many retro bands, you find out about new bands from the 70s all the time. They're like, "Oh wow, that was a really great band," and they just didn't get their moment.
Yeah.
But that doesn't discount their passion or practice or ability or the fact that it came around. You're like, oh God, that was an amazing band. Yes, they were, you know, and ultimately just make sure there's no guarantees. Just love what you do.
Yep.
Just make sure you love it, because there's nothing worse than somebody that's embittered and just think that they were owed something. Oh, I've been doing this for 20 years. It's like, yeah, so what?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, I know those. I know a bunch of those
that's
people.
Not,
exactly.
That's not special. I mean, I get it, but it's not special.
No, no, and this is just not. It's not ever been how it worked. You don't just have to stand there and be there. You have to, you know.
No, it's your life.
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing what you want? Is this your passion? Is this what you want to do? It's not wasted because you don't have an audience. It's not wasted.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny too, because I took a long break when my kids were little, and you know, I spent, you know, maybe 8 years out of bands and not playing, and it was like
I did the same thing.
Yeah, and then when I came back to it, I was like, how did I do that? I mean, I think the only way I did it was because you have you know, something else to fill that passion with. You know, you pour it into your kids when they're little, so you know that's what I guess saved me. But once I started doing it again, I was just like, Jesus, I can't believe that I lived my life without doing this for like you know, I hadn't done that since I was 15 years old. It was a weird experience to have, and I think it's just like, you just have to be persistent, keep at it, and just keep doing it because you love it, and then the other stuff will follow, and it will become whatever it's going to be. You know, you weren't expecting Yob to do what it did. You know, I'm in a band now. You know, it's not, you know, we're not famous. You know, there are people who like us. That's great. I don't really care. I just go into the practice room and we write songs because we have to, and because we love playing them.
Our society, I mean, I think it's just human nature. Like we're so fame obsessed.
Yeah.
But like there's so many more people that have died that you've never heard of than people that you have. But yet those, I mean, you know, there's an interdependence, and all the people that have existed, you don't know all the people that maybe that like created the buoy for someone like Robert or like Leonard Cohen. There could be these countless inspirations and and supports for this thing that you do know, and it doesn't invalidate the fact that you don't know that person. It certainly doesn't invalidate their life. I mean, for most people, it's true. Like, you just live your life and you live it to the best of your ability. And because we're just so content focused, who's this person, or what content are they bringing? And they're like invalidated if they don't bring content. And it's just wrong. It's inaccurate. And I say that as somebody who, like you said, like, we didn't expect this, but we also don't know how long it's going to be around. It's like, you know, I saw a Cheap Trick at a county fair.
At a county fair, yeah.
And they were immaculate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, immaculate. And I listened to a lot. I mean, In Color is a really important record to me. And like Robin Zander at the county fair in Eugene, Oregon, leveled. Like, he was so good. And it's like, there's no guarantees in this world, you know.
Yeah.
There's no guarantees. And so just, fuck, man, live your passion and swing. And but you know, your expectations are what gets you burned out.
Yep.
You know, ultimately.
So that's interesting. I mean, Bandcamp comes up a lot because, you know, you talk about those bands in the 70s that, you know, a lot of people didn't hear about or nobody really knew about. And to some degree that comes down to the process of recording and producing physical copies of music, right? There's just stuff that we couldn't capture. Mm-hmm. Now it's so cheap and easy to record at a basic quality level that's unprecedented that a platform like Bandcamp becomes this living archive. And as we do these episodes and talk to people, the last thing we ask about is, like, if you have like hometown hero bands, you know, your favorite bands that inspired you. And a lot of times it's bands that people never heard about. And we're getting to this point now where there's a digital record of a lot of those bands. Maybe it's old videos on YouTube, but, you know, 20 years from now, every band that ever recorded anything is going to have a really clean copy of it on Bandcamp. So there will be this opportunity to resurface these gems that down the line we find out this is a band that inspired 100 other bands that became much more popular than them, but the record of the first band will exist and we can go back to it and listen to it. It's such a cool thing, I think.
Music archaeology.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I hate to bring it up in this context, in the sense that, like, you know, I mean, this falls into the category, but like the band I was talking about that like got me like, oh my God, I gotta play guitar. The guy's name is Phil Merwin, and he has a twin brother named Fred Merwin, and they started a band called Dirt Clod Fight. But they did a lot of touring in the 90s, and it was all super hand-to-mouth touring. I mean, all of Yob's touring up until 2014. So, I mean, we've been touring from like 2002 to 2014.
12 years.
And it was all on credit cards. Yeah. You know, it was just getting out there and trying to play. It was really like, you know, it was like, I mean, I don't know how to describe it. It was like Comic-Con, in the sense that, like, you're just going out to play with people that were cut from the same cloth. And that was just your life. That was just, you didn't expect money. It wasn't about that. You just had to fund it to get out there and be with your people. And so, but like for Dirt Clod Fight, they did a lot of touring like that. But like, if I hadn't seen Phil doing what he was doing, like, Yob would have never happened. It's really true. But that's a band that, like, the Dirt Clod Fight isn't a super unknown band, but they may not be known either. And But it's exactly to the point that you're saying. And it's cause and effect.
Yep.
Right? It's cause and condition. Like without that condition, I wouldn't have had the cause to do what I did.
Yep.
And I'm not putting that on some inflated whatever. I'm just speaking about it to my life, and speaking to it in the sense of like why you guys are even interested to talk to me.
Yeah.
Like it's part of the lineage of
Yep.
why you care.
Yep.
You know, is where that happened and where that happened for me. And so, you know, and I think you see certain bands where like a band like Neurosis that are so respectful of their lineage.
Yeah.
You know, they're so respectful of where they came from. And I think it's part of like the family vibe in a sense of what it is when you go and see Neurosis, is they have their own families. They've been through their kind of ups and downs to be where they are now. But they are really, they express gratitude to their lineage in a way that is not, it's authentic, you know, and that the A word there can be really trite too.
Yeah, it's like art.
Right,
What is it with the A words?
I know. But like when I watch Neurosis, it almost, I mean, I can name on many times where I'm like watching them play and I start contemplating a change in my life that I want to have.
Experience.
Yeah, I'm watching them and I start thinking about, oh man, I just really need to call my brother, or it's really crazy, but they are part of a lineage that they honor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
It's funny too, speaking of Operator Generator, in the late 90s in San Jose, when Sleep was, you know, doing their thing, there was a band that we all thought was going to be the band called Dear Deceased. And that band launched 1,000.
Oh man, that's new to me. I got to write this down.
I don't know. I'll see. We might be able to dig up some of the recordings. They're on the like Stoner Rock wiki, mostly because Mitch was the singer. Or bass player, singer, and then George Rice played bass or basic guitar, and so it's like, and so from there we get High on Fire and Operator Generator, and we all thought Dear Deceased was going to be huge, and Sleep was kind of like an oddity. They played too loud, and it was weird. You know, we liked it, but it was like, no, that's the band that's going to go, and they didn't, but. Because of a bunch of people went and saw them, it launched a bunch of like stoner and doom bands here in the Bay Area, and they're kind of lost to time. But a few of us remember. I always get excited. Yeah. We've seen in Bandcamp a couple times where someone, you know, has gotten interested retroactively in a music scene somewhere in the world, and gone to try and dig through the archives and find any kind of recordings that document that this is a scene that happened, and then re-release the music so that people around the world can understand at a point in time there was whatever going on in Detroit or in Baltimore, and there were these amazing bands, and the rest of the world never really got to see or hear them. Maybe you saw or heard one, but this is I love those kinds of projects. And I think it's going to get so much easier to do it moving forward because we're all just dumping everything we make on Bandcamp.
No, it's amazing. And to your point too, like when you talk about like almost inadvertent patrons.
Yep.
You know, where it's like they're inadvertently patrons of something like way before Yob, when I played in crossover bands, we used to play this club semi-regularly. It was called Harpo's back then. But one of the people that used to come all the time to various kinds of shows is this guy named Henry Vestine. And he's from Canned Heat. So Canned Heat, you know, Woodstock, you know, that guy. He was one of the songwriters. But he would come to like punk shows. And he ended up croaking in part from alcoholism, but he came to the shows, and I met that guy and hung out with him, and it was like, okay, this is Henry Vestine, and look, he wasn't trying to like impress us in any way.
Mm-hmm.
He was just an unbiased opinion of what you had.
Yep.
Like he was a no bullshit kind of guy. And if he was there, and if he was drinking at the start of your set and drinking at the end of your set, then that meant you were okay.
Yeah.
and it was, and he would talk to you and hang out with you. And I remember way back then, it was like, it wasn't like we were trying to impress this person,
Mm-hmm.
but like, it was a part of it. You know, it was like you had these people that were new and current, and then you had this old school scene. And if they didn't go out and smoke during your set, then it was cool. And it was just a part of you coming up. And it really does kind of, and it really kind of informed something in me where it was just like, look, our only responsibility is to lay out whatever we have on the stage,
Mm-hmm.
and to speak to the truest thing about us. And we don't have any say in who our audience is, ultimately. And to try to reach for an audience is already like a mistake.
Yeah.
And so, and then in that process, and just understanding that there's no guarantee of reward other than you're doing the thing in you that you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And if you do that, that's the reward. And then if there's anybody that actually gets it, then that's just like, oh my God, you
Just
know,
a bonus.
Even better.
Yeah.
yeah. And then when you start talking to those people, you don't have to go very far to go like, oh yeah, of course, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
what are you listening to? What am I listening to? Oh, you know, it's community.
Yeah. And those
You know?
those patrons are a big part of what keeps lifting this whole thing up. I mean, we talked about Frank Kozak already, but what was he other than really a patron? Like, he had no reason to start a label. He made a bunch of money drawing posters and was like, all right, I like this music, so I'm going to make sure the world hears it. Or Jad Schickler was doing Meteor City, and, you know, so he was doing it on the East Coast. Mike Varney, we've met Mike Varney a bunch of times. Mike came, he bought a ticket for me to go to Psycho. And just hung out with us and just talked shop. He's no, you know, and he's just fascinated.
Mike
by
Varney, that's an old school name right there. Not a lot of
Yeah,
people know Mike Varney.
Shrapnel Records, and
Yes,
he's still at it, and you know, giving bands advice and listening to new music and.
Oh yeah, well, when we were approached by Metal Blade, like that was one of the things. Like I had this conversation with Brian Slagle, right?
Yeah.
And this was like, I mean, I grew up on the Metal Massacre comps. Like one of the biggest deals to me was the Metal Massacre 6 comp, which was, that was the first time I heard Possessed, first time I heard Dark Angel, first time I heard The Obsessed. And these were pivotal skateboarding at 14, listening to these bands. Dark Angel, first time I heard Dark Angel.
Fucking Mayhem.
Yes, Mayhem Portland.
Yes,
that was Portland Mayhem.
The other Mayhem.
Drummer, the drummer of that band then went to Poison Idea.
So that's Steve.
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
He was
that
Portland
is exactly
Mayhem.
Right. And so I was listening to the Portland Mayhem at 14, Tear Down the Walls, and that was like pivotal to me. And then when I started hearing like the Ian MacKaye EP and War All the Time, and then Feel the Darkness, I felt Steve.
Yeah.
And so when I first met Steve, it was just like, oh my God, you know, this guy's drumming is in my fucking bones. But like that all came from the Metal Massacre 6 for me, which was then Brian Slagle. And I just told him point blank, I'm like, why would you even want to work with a band like us? And he's like, look, he's like, I just go where my passion is, and that's it. And it was really this important moment where it was just like, wow, you know, it's not, yes, sure, of course there's business, but the people that are driven in metal, for the most part, I mean, certainly you can get burned, right? And, like, that's true.
Yeah.
But it was, to your point, it was like talking to somebody who's like, oh, okay, you're still a fan. That's why you want to dump money into something that potentially will give you nothing in return.
No return.
Because you're a fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. God, I'm looking. I had a few of these Metal Massacre comps. Growing up in the Bay Area was a little bit different because a lot of, especially the first wave of Bay Area thrash, like they were just part of the world here. So we were all aware of all of them and listening to them.
Like what?
So,
like what?
Oh, any of the early Bay Area thrash bands, Forbidden Testament,
Exodus.
Exodus. I loved, my favorite was, and this isn't exactly first wave, but Blind Illusion. And the record that Les Claypool plays on, and that guy's still doing it. The main guy from Blind Illusion is he's still making new music.
Wow.
Yeah, I get a little, I tend, because I'm not from there, I will sometimes tag in like Los Angeles with San Francisco from that era. Mm-hmm. So I'll think of bands like, Possessed or Forbidden or Holy Terror.
Death Angel,
yes, of course. But California.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bay Area, like, for me too, for what it's worth, like anything that John Cobbett does.
Yep.
Anything that John Cobbett does, like, I can say that I'm unbiased. I mean, I've done 2 Vol records, but I'm such a huge fan of like Ludacris.
Yeah, and they're back at it.
They're going to do the Terror Fest, right, in Seattle.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're playing the Northwest Terror Fest.
Oh, nice.
If there's any band that deserves their due.
I miss Aesop disappeared off of social media, but I miss that guy's takes on the world. He was a cracker.
No, he's still there. He's just got
dark.
sober.
Oh yeah, that I know.
He's just sober.
but the wit, like Aesop he embodies wit.
Yeah.
Like he can say so much with a handful of words, and it really is just something that I wish I had. But I'm so glad that he exists in the world. He's a very witty guy.
Oh yeah, no, he's still there. He's just quiet. I forget. One night I think I was in Austin, maybe Dallas. I was in Texas, and it just happened to be when there was a show that was like Twin Temple, maybe not Graveyard. It was one of the Swedish bands, and I just dropped something about Twin. Do you know Twin Temple? I don't generally like to badmouth. They're kind of like Ghost, if Ghost was doing like classic 50s songs like doo-wop, and so the whole aesthetic is like it's a husband and wife,
so like a Misfits version of that.
Yeah, kind of.
Ghost.
Yeah, but it was like it started, and I was like, okay, but like 10 minutes in, it was like, okay, get the shtick. Now, is it going to go somewhere else at some point, or does it just continue at this level? And it just stays there. And they've gotten pretty big. No one cares what I think about them, but I just posted something about it on Facebook, and I remember Aesop dropped in and just was cracking me up, posting just the most random, hilarious comments. I think I met him once.
Oh yeah, he's everything you would hope for. Brilliant, smart,
lives up to expectations.
Cutting, witful. Yeah, he's just amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's been.
I'm so like to be on, and for what it's worth, to do records with Sigrid and Aesop and John, like the 2 records I did with them, is harrowing.
Yeah.
like John and Sigrid are classically trained, and then so when I'm singing like pitches, John and Sigrid hear that shit in an instant, if it's right or if it's wrong.
Yeah.
And then Aesop hears it too, but then all of them are focused on the the wording and the vowels and the content and what is being sung and where is it coming from. And there's nothing about that that's wrong. And it just really, it made me so much better. Like the harmonies that I did on like the song Marrow, that wouldn't have existed without the first Vol record.
Oh, if you hadn't done Vol. Interesting.
Interesting.
No.
So what you're
I mean,
saying is people
I wanted to do this
better.
Yes. And you know, for what it's worth, you know, I'm a really good collaborator in the sense that like I'll listen to whatever the wisdom is in the room. And if enough people say the same thing, then I'm like, okay, it's not that I won't, if I have a strong feeling, it's not that I won't go for it, but I also listen. And so then I go, oh, okay, well, do these people know something that I don't know? Do I need to do something that I don't know how to do? What do I need to do it? And my current project, I just did, this will be the only plugging part of this whole thing.
Totally fine.
But I just did a collaboration with a pretty celebrated classical composer.
Oh.
Yes, and his name is James Romig, and he was a finalist for the Pulitzer.
Oh my gosh!
In
I saw
2019, and he wrote me kind of out of nowhere, and he got hooked into like this world that we talk about via the New York Times, and like Sun was like a kind of an entry point, and then he got hooked into, I think Sun and Yob were being reviewed in a similar thing.
Oh, gotcha.
And so then he got hooked into Yob, into our long form playing. And for him, he's like, oh, that's classical music.
Yeah.
And I don't think of it that way, but for him, it's like, okay, there's movements.
Yep.
There's a composition. There's, you know, and so.
There's motifs that you repeat. I mean, yeah, it's classical composition.
And him and his wife, who's also a classical pianist, and for the piece that they did together, which is called Still, so quote, still, unquote, that was a finalist for the Pulitzer. They happened to be vacationing in Vancouver when Yob came through, Toronto, and Yob came to play there. And he wrote me out of the blue and said, hey, I would love to hang out and talk. And I was just like, yeah, of course, let's hang out and talk. And then he hit me up saying, you know, I love this style of music. I love minimalist composition. And what would it be like if I wrote, and he's like, I love Sun, but I love Stephen Reich, and I love, what could we do together? And so he wrote a piece, because I said, oh man, that sounds really intimidating. And,
seriously.
And way out of my wheelhouse. But then I'm like, okay, well, yes. And so he's like, okay, cool, let's keep talking. And then he wrote a piece for me. Like he wrote me at one point and said, okay, for the song Lie That Is Sin, what chords are you playing? And because my music theory is like Swiss cheese, like it's good on a sandwich, but there's a lot of holes in it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this is what I know. This is what I'm doing. And I sent him a video of the chords.
Yeah.
And then he constructed a piece for me, but for him. And basically it's in rhythm ratios of counts of 13, 14, and 15. And it doesn't reach unison for 2,730 beats.
Oh shit!
Jesus.
Which is 58 minutes. So it basically the way to like wrap your brain around that is like if I write a riff and then I repeat it, that's unison. So he wrote a riff that's 58 minutes long, ultimately. and And so then he sent it to me. Like, this is what I have in mind, and it's informed in part by like Sun. But like, this is the thing that I want you to do. And I'm like looking at it going, I don't even know how to approach this. And so I wrote a friend of mine in town whose name is Jake Pavlak. And he's a graduate from the University of Oregon Music School. Mm-hmm. And I said, here's this piece of music. I don't know how to read it, and I don't know how to count it. And then I started doing lessons with Jake to learn how to count it. And then we went through the entire piece of music to anything that wasn't a bar chord, because James, the composer, knows, he notates bar chords throughout it, but there's probably at least 20 chord voicings that aren't bar chords.
Yeah.
And so Jake and I figured out what those voicings are. And then I took lessons with Jake for about 9 months to learn how to count and read the piece. And then we went to Billy Barnett, who's recorded the Yob records. Mm-hmm. And so it was Billy Barnett, James Romig from a distance, and Jake Pavlak and myself. I brought all the Yob gear. Anything that I used for Yob, I brought the same exact stuff. So Monson guitar, Black Art Stoneworks distortion pedal, and I used a Deep Six compressor. But then I also used like a Fuzzlord EQ pedal, and that was what we did the piece for. And it's 58 minutes.
Oh shit!
That doesn't repeat anything from the beginning to the end.
Oh my god!
But there are themes. And so you just have to count all the things, and it's counted 48 beats per minute for 58 minutes. And I finished I worked on this for the better part of a year, and then recorded it probably 3 or 4 months ago, roughly. And then it's just been picked up for a label from a really amazing label. I can't say it yet. We're going to announce it soon, but it'll be out in June. And it's a harrowing listen, like in the sense that like it's almost borderline, like it's a person can listen to it and be like, it sounds like it's improvised.
Yeah.
But it's not.
And it's like Dope Smoker in the sense that there's so many themes that are repeated, and you just have to want to go on that ride.
Yeah.
To get to the end of it. And you just have to have that mindset and the heart to get to the end of it. But it's so complex.
Yeah. No, I can't wait. I think when I saw the news about it is when I decided to hit you back up on email and just try and get you on board to do this, because I was fascinated and I wanted to hear about it. I'm a sucker for a long, complex composition.
Like I am literally like, I don't even know how to describe this in reference to the people that I'm working with. I just really had to step up to be in their world.
Yeah.
But yet, for James Romig, who's so much more ascended than I am in knowledge, he wanted what I do to live in his world. And so my job was to learn his composition. And my job isn't to be Yo-Yo Ma or Pavarotti. My job is to be me in that world for the thing that he wrote.
Yeah.
And so it's like this weird marriage of like, when you listen to the piece, it is exactly what he wrote, but there's it's kind of Black Flag too. Like there's weird little noises and scrapes and things. And it's me playing this crazily trained person's world who appreciates my world. And so it's like, in any of the interactions I've had with James, never once has he made me feel like he was a Pulitzer finalist.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he's super stoked to work with you as well.
Yep.
Well, we live in different worlds, but yet his world connected into Sun, which then connected into Yob. Yeah. And then my world then lifted up to connect with a Pulitzer finalist. Yeah. And I say that only as like, it's just like, it's kind of crazy. And for like the Pulitzer world, they put out, like they have a record and they have books and print books, and they keep it all in part of their history. So like if you're a finalist, that just never goes away.
It doesn't go away.
Unless, we all die, and then even a Corolla won't go anywhere. It's like, but until then, a Toyota Corolla, until then, it's a part of the ethos. And so, in the pandemic where I was just like, what am I doing? What's Yob doing? What's going to happen? Can we even tour again? This project came across my lap, and it kind of forced me to step up and do this work.
Well, and imagine, just like with recording the Volvo records, imagine now what you take to the next music you write for Yob. Right? Exactly. It's like,
I don't even know, because, inspiration is an interesting thing. There's a lot of camps around how do you do inspiration. I tend to think I used to think that like inspiration was waiting for it, like casting a line and waiting for something to bite. As time goes on, I more think that like inspiration's a practice. Yeah. And that you just show up no matter what. And so in the fisherman's analogy, you just go to the bank all the time and you cast your line all the time. And the more you cast it, the more it's likely you're going to catch something. Mm-hmm. Yep. And in the process, just make sure that you like fishing. Yeah. Make sure you like your own mind when nothing's biting. Make sure you have tackle that you're nerdy about. Make sure that you're wearing something warm. It's just like there's all these things that go into it that's part of the love. And so whether that be gear or whether that be, for me, in part is like just constantly trying to find new bands. Are you guys familiar with that band Slift?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
That band so Uman. Good. Oh, it's so good.
I don't know. I don't know the second one. What was that?
Uman.
Huh.
That was their last record.
That was the Slift record. Yeah. Okay, I thought it was another band.
It was no. Weird, like Silver Surfer looking dude on it.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, it's so good.
So good. I think that's French, right?
That could be. That sounds right. Yeah. I've just heard like we're playing with them at a Desert Fest.
Oh, nice.
And I really hope we're there long enough for that I can see them. But I've seen a lot of people say, you don't want to follow this band. And I'm just like, oh, that's so good. It's just...
Yeah, like, is there a better compliment than that, honestly?
Yes. Dude, we did a whole tour where we had to follow Voivod.
Oh,
Can you fucking imagine that?
I'm sorry.
What universe? I mean, the only thing that we had in our camp is that we're not them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all we have to do is be the best version of us. We can't compete with them.
Yeah, it's totally different things. That's the only way it could work. If you were just a Voivod, copy 20 years later, yeah, it's fucked. No thanks.
And it didn't work for everybody. You know, I mean, there's lots of people that left, but the thing is, in like multiple weeks of being out with them, we realized that we're all, as we are all hanging out, we're cut from the same cloth.
Yep.
Yeah. Like we connected with them, and like we just had such a great tour and a meeting of hearts and minds, and they were so not shitty
Yeah.
about their history or their legendary.
And they could be.
They certainly could be, but
and
they
it's
weren't.
so great when they're not. Like
Yeah.
when, you know, you meet your heroes and they don't disappoint you.
Well, and they
Yes.
told us that like we were one of the best tours that they'd ever been done.
Oh, nice.
But I think it's in part because we're not busy trying to like party and score.
Yeah.
And so I really think it was mostly like pragmatic. Like we were just easy to be on tour with. Like nobody was spouting off shit at 6 a.m. in our camp.
Yeah.
That's the best or the worst. Conversely,
worst.
it's when you're on tour with someone who's just like you line up with in like life choices. It makes the whole thing so much better. So much.
It was a very adult tour.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very adult.
Yeah,
I think
maybe
it's what
that's
it came
not
down
cool, but who cares?
I don't care. I'm an adult, you know,
Yeah.
and so I mean, I respect just sowing your oats and howling to the moon, but like from a distance, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
You can say I was there once.
I enjoy-
Now I'm not
Yeah,
anymore. I'm
no,
happy with
fucking
that.
go get that.
Yeah.
Life is passing you by. Just
Exactly.
do what you got to do.
Yep. So
Over there.
you already talked a little bit about one hometown band that was inspirational for you. This is usually how we wrap up. Is there anybody else like when you were coming
Yes.
up when you were a kid? So lay them on us. Who did we miss in Oregon?
Well, there was a band called Sepsis, and it's SEPSIS. They're a death metal band. The drummer played for a band called the Detonators, which was a big deal, like a punk band. And they were like an early punk band. Like they played with all of the bands, like really. And their singer, Bruce, was a huge support for us. Even before Yob, when I was in this punk band that were a bunch of sawed-off punks, sawed-off little kids, and he would get mad at us when we were on tour with the Detonators, but he would teach us things. And then when Yob started becoming a thing outside of Eugene, he was so supportive. He was just like, oh, you guys are making Eugene proud, and he was so great. But he's a veteran, the way that like No Means No or DOA are veterans. He's that level of veteran. But then there was Sepsis, and when I was in this band, we had a moment of being good, but we had a lot of times of being bad. And so I'm not going to mention the name, but like when they were our friends, and I knew Carl, the drummer, from Detonators. And Kim McKill and this band Sepsis were going to get ready to do a show together. And they invited me to their rehearsal space to check out what they were doing. And so I was like, oh yeah, it's fucking awesome. Cool. I mean, I'm like 20 years old, 21. I'm got my head up my ass, you know, just everything. And so here's a band that had been rehearsing and writing for a year before they did anything.
Wow.
That's a lot of patience.
Yeah.
Right. And so they were like super into like Carcass, Rika Putrefaction, and Symphonies of Sickness, Autopsy, all the levels of Autopsy, Mental Funeral. And they were cut from that cloth. And so I went to their rehearsal to watch them play.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow, this is the best band in Eugene. Like they're number one, and they're going to open for us. We're fucked.
Yeah.
And sure enough, because they've been rehearsing all that time, they were that good.
They were great.
And you can find them on Bandcamp, Sepsis. And there's a couple of different Sepsises.
Yeah, I saw there's a Poland.
But there's a band. The album is called To Make Rotten. To Make Rotten.
Released in
That's
1991.
the Sepsis. 1991. That's exactly right.
There it
and
is.
That's the band. And I've listened to that cassette so many times.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And yes, that's it. That is exactly it.
See?
And
Bandcamp at it again. Preserving our history.
Yep.
Yep. And that's a band that played, that recording is live to 2-inch tape.
Oh, wow.
So that's like, there's no bullshit. This is a band that rehearsed the fuck out of themselves until they recorded. And then Mikey from that band went on to do a band called Aldebaran, which is from Portland. And Carl went to play with Blynd from The Accused. And they did a band called Toe Tag.
Toe Tag.
Yeah. But like, and The Accused were a big to me growing up, particularly, you know, Martha Splatterhead's Maddest Stories Ever Told, that record. But Sepsis locally is a band that, like, just, I don't know, you know, I mean, you listen to everything in 2022 and there's just lots of things like it. But in 1991, there weren't just a lot of things like it.
Yeah.
And they had their own unique take on everything. And it was punk in the sense that, like, the way The Accused was punk in 88, 89, where you really just had to, your music was dodging and weaving. Your vocal structures were dynamic. It was spit out like Kurt from DRI.
Yeah.
But then there were big chunks where you let music be music. And so it wasn't just vocals all the time. And then they had a couple of different vocalists like Carcass. So they had a lower vocal, Jason, the bass player. And then there was Mikey, who had the higher vocal, but it's just spit out vehemently. And holy fuck, they like, okay, 1991, right? This is 2022, and I'm speaking about them in this way.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
31 years.
that's how big a deal it was to me.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm gonna have to
so
check this out.
Anyone who's into dirty, this funky death metal, you should check out this band.
All right. Sepsis.
We'll link them on the episode page too.
On the episode page.
Awesome. Well, we have kept you for far beyond our initial estimate here, but it's been awesome. And for the first time, you know, fingers crossed, we get to say when a guest is leaving, we'll get to see you pretty soon in person.
Ooh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Right? Like, we've talked
fingers
to so
crossed.
many musicians who aren't.
Yes.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, we've been to shows at Great American Music Hall. San Francisco's doing it right. And so, yeah, everything's on the downswing here. So I don't think you're going to have a problem. And that makes me very, very happy. So, yeah, we'll definitely, we'll come bug you there for sure. So we'll be hanging out. Maybe the Broom Crew will get us in.
There we go.
Some kind of special deal.
Yes, definitely.
But really looking forward to seeing you in person, and really stoked that you agreed to do this. And I'm sure everybody's going to love this. And go see them if Yob's playing in a town near you anytime soon. Don't miss it, and have fun when you guys go to New York to Saint Vitus. It's going to be a blast.
Thank you, man.
I wish we were going to be there.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, we're working hard to try to. Yeah, I mean, we're going to have like I would say like a kind of a hub of similar songs, but every night we're going to intersperse at least one or two songs that will be unique to that night.
Yep.
And you know, it's a tricky thing because of course we're trying to get ready for all these things, but when you're a band that has on average 11 to 22-minute songs.
Yeah, I know.
It's tricky how to intersperse things.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, do you remember when you were a newish band and you got like those 25-minute sets?
it wasn't uncommon. Like what we would do is we would do 2 1/4 song sets.
Yeah.
So we would do 2 actual songs, and then we would play like maybe like the end of Catharsis.
Like a shortened.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and then, but we had. I mean, I feel like we had the right idea, which it wasn't. Songs were getting cut short. It was whatever we decided to do in the time frame. Keep to the time frame.
Yeah.
Make people happy in the sense of the people that are running the shows. Like we weren't being the band going, one more song, 1 out of 4.
And then it's 12 minutes long.
Yeah.
And it's just such a bad look. You just don't ever get booked again.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're being an asshole.
Yep.
So it'd be like, okay, let's stick to our time frame. And then within 25 minutes, let's just fucking practice the fuck out of ourselves to be the best version of that. And so, but yeah, it is a challenge when we're on festivals or we look at our time slot and go, okay, what's going to work?
Yeah.
And we don't want to be the asshole, not because necessarily, it's not an anti-punk thing. To me, it's more like an actual punk thing where it's like, you're a cog in this crazily awesome machinery, and that you just want to be a part of the awesomeness of it.
Yeah.
By showing up and doing the cool thing.
Yeah, and don't be an egomaniac and wreck it for everybody else.
No, I've seen it over and over and over again. Yeah. And it's just like, even in really great bands, it's like, it's not a great look.
No.
But not because it's a look, but it's because of it's a mindset.
Yeah, well, and it's like it's like not understanding how what you do impacts everybody else. It's like just taking that out of the decision process and saying, I don't care how it affects everybody else. I just want what I want. And
we're no longer a part of a community.
Yep.
It's just us trying to rob the golden goose for as many golden eggs as we can get.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's short-sighted. Yep.
Awesome. All right, Mike. Well, it was great to talk to you again.
This is awesome.
This is incredible.
Thanks for sticking around later.
Thanks for sticking around, and see you in a few weeks, a month and a couple of weeks. I may be thinking it sooner than it is, but it'll be here soon enough.
Yeah.
All right.
Take care.
You have a great night. I'll throw you back in the waiting room, and then I never say this, and then you can just let yourself out. And we will talk to you
Short
soon.
Yourself out.
All right, guys.
Good night, good sir. An hour and a half, my ass.
Yeah. We're just irresistible.
We are irresistible.
That was great. I'm glad that he stuck around.
Yes, me too.
Because that was a good episode.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, so let's like, subscribe, whatever the fuck. You just listened to 3 hours of Mike Scheidt dropping wisdom bomb after bomb
after wisdom bomb.
I don't know what else to tell you. If you haven't subscribed yet or haven't passed this around to your friends, then this one will make you do that. So what was the band that he mentioned that we were going to play out?
It was Cryptic Brood.
Cryptic Brood.
Yep.
So we are going to leave you all with the Mike Scheidt approved Cryptic Brood.
He did not say what song, so I guess just pick. I think there's a bunch of splits. So I think there's that green one is a full length.
Outcome of Obnoxious Science. That's the one he mentioned.
There we go.
Well, I mean, look, we got to open with the opener. I think that's really the only way to go about it here.
All right, open with the opener.
So thanks for listening. Thanks for sticking
everybody.
around. If you're not going to see Yob in the next couple months, I'm sorry. If you would like to, come hang out in San Francisco with us.
Come see us.
And I'm not going to rule out the possibility that we'll end up in Felton the next night.
I guess it just depends on how things are.
Yeah, depends on how things are.
Because that would be amazing.
Indeed. All right, so here we go. Cryptic Brood. The album is called Outcome of Obnoxious Science, and the first track is Biting Through Flesh. Tommy Likey. That was wild, and I cannot wait to hear
Are we still talking?
the rest of that record. Those fucking speed ups and slow downs, it's not just that they go from one tempo to another, it's that the whole band slows down,
Yeah.
and then the whole band speeds up again. Have some experience doing this, something I really like to do in music. If you ever listened to the end of Left Behind, it is really hard to do. And you got to fucking practice a lot, and you got to be
I can imagine.
in sync.
Got to be on.
Yeah, because we're all slowing down the same rate at the same time.
Crazy.
Every beat is a little bit slower than the one before it. Awesome. I can't wait to hear the rest of that. This was the latest episode of Blynd Submyshynz, and
We out.
Thanks for joining us for another week of Blynd Submyshynz. See episode description for the links to all artists discussed in this episode, and visit their sites to support them directly by buying their music and merch. Share links to the podcast with your friends, especially if they're in bands. Bands! If you want us to listen to your music on a future episode, please submit one song to blyndSub@gmail.com. That's BLYND sub@gmail.com. Bandcamp's linked preferred, but not required. Find us on our social media at Blynd Submyshynz. Full video episodes are available on our YouTube. Remember, we going blind so you don't have to. Blynd Submyshynz.
It's Blynd Submyshynz with Jeff and JD, Jeff and JD, JD and Jeff, JD and Jeff. Blynd Submyshynz with Jeff and JD, Jeff and JD, JD and Jeff, JD and Jeff.